Hey guys, tonight we're sneaking past velvet curtains, slipping on mismatched shoes with bells, and tumbling headfirst into the strange, ridiculous, occasionally terrifying world of medieval court jesters. It might sound like fun at first. Perform for royalty, crack a few jokes, and juggle an apple. But if you think this was just a dream job of laughter and leisure, I have news for you. You probably wouldn't survive the first week. Not because you weren't funny, but because someone else in the room might not be in the mood to laugh. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're tuning in from in the comments and what time it is there. I have always loved seeing people from all around the world join me. Now, dim the lights, turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You never apply to be a jester. No one wakes up one morning, stretches, and says, "I want to make the king laugh while risking my head." Most jesters in the medieval world were discovered, usually in the most embarrassing possible ways. Maybe you tripped over your feet during a village fair, flailed dramatically into a pie cart, and made the lord's daughter snort her mead. Congratulations, you're funny now. Maybe you had a weird laugh. Perhaps you could mimic the bishop's sneeze. Maybe you just looked like someone who didn't mind wearing shoes shaped like duckbills. And so begins your not-so-glamorous life in royal entertainment. They don't give you a golden badge. You don't get a title. You get a bell-covered hat, a set of mismatched tights, and a room next to the kitchens that always smells like onions and regret. Your job? Keep everyone laughing. Always. Even when your stomach is empty or your feet hurt from dancing for 3 hours. You perform at feasts, council meetings, royal disputes, and occasionally while someone is being beheaded. Dark humor indeed. You are expected to juggle, tumble, recite poetry, mock your appearance, and sometimes impersonate people currently in the room. If they laugh, you live. You should have packed lighters for your last journey if they didn't. Your audience is unpredictable. One day, the queen may burst into laughter over your goose impression. The next, she may throw her goblet at your head because your voice reminded her of her cousin, who owes her money. The royal toddler once demanded you do your funny dance while wearing a bucket. You did it, twice. The bucket still smells like soup. You sleep on straw. You eat leftovers, if there are any. You wear a costume stitched with more patchwork than dignity. Your hat has bells that ring every time you breathe too hard. You get used to the sound. Eventually, you don't notice the bells until someone else does. And yet, oddly, you adapt. You learn how to read moods faster than any court advisor. You memorize who likes sarcasm and who needs slapstick. You whisper satirical poems under your breath and turn tense dinner tables into giggle-filled banquets. You also learn that not all jokes are safe. Some lords take offense easily. You once told a rhyme that included a pig, a priest, and a clumsy knight. The pig laughed. The knight didn't. The priest tried to excommunicate your shoes. That was a strange day. Historians still argue whether jesters were fools pretending to be clever or clever people pretending to be fools. What's clear is that you are walking a skinny line between hilarity and humiliation. Every moment is a performance. Even silence is a scene. You are not exactly staff. You are not family. You are more like a houseplant that talks. The king sometimes jokes that you are his most trusted advisor. Everyone laughs. You laugh too. The difference is you are not entirely sure it was a joke. You do get perks, strangely. You can say what others cannot if you say it with rhythm and rhyme. You can call a duke a donkey if you compare him to a charming donkey with excellent manners. You can mimic the queen's singing, as long as you do it in falsetto while wearing a fake beard. It is all a matter of framing. Still, every evening ends the same. You retreat to your corner, exhausted, your costume wrinkled, your voice sore. You remove your bells and listen to the stillness. For a moment, no one is watching. No one is laughing. You breathe. In those quiet minutes, you remember who you are under the colors. A person who made it through another day, not by swinging a sword, but by spinning a joke. Someone who survived the court, not by power, but by wit. Before you drift off, imagine one final moment. The court is quiet. Candles flicker. The musicians have gone home. The last of the guests stumbles out into the night. And there you are, standing alone in the center of the hall. You bow one last time, not for applause, but out of habit. You bow one last time, not for applause, but out of habit. You pick up a dropped napkin, kick it into the air, catch it on your elbow, and smile. No one sees it. No one claps. But it feels good to be good at something. Because behind every jingle of your bells is a heartbeat. Behind every giggle you conjure is your longing for connection. You are a patchwork soul in a velvet world, slipping through power with poetry. And now, as the moonlight stretches across the stone floor and the laughter echo fades into hush, you close your eyes. You are not just a fool. You are not just a shadow behind the throne. You are a survivor, a story, and tonight, you are finally off stage. No one applies to be a court jester. There's no job posting, no interview, and no portfolio required. What is the most common path into the position? Causing a public spectacle at a village festival. Picture it. You're waving a fan during the spring fair, a little tipsy from honey wine, when you trip over your aunt's skirt and fall face first into a barrel of mead. The crowd roars. A passing noble wipes tears of laughter from his eyes and says, "This one's got talent. Bring him to court." Congratulations. You've just landed a lifelong contract without even knowing it. Some were recruited because their singing was so atrocious it annoyed entire villages. Others got in because they could mimic pig noises from their stomach. Some just looked hilariously confused when the prince was in a foul mood. Your destiny could pivot entirely on the comedic timing of a sneeze. You don't remember the exact moment your life turned. Maybe it was that time you secretly performed sock puppet theater in the hayloft and got caught by the palace gatekeeper, who laughed so hard he called you an undiscovered artist. Maybe it was the soup. You were trying not to vomit from expired fish stew, but somehow, your contorted expression became an instant hit. Rising from a forgotten hamlet to the royal court isn't glamorous, but it's enough to make people remember your name when they need a laugh. You're treated like a novelty toy that makes sounds when you arrive at court. Servants tug at your sleeves to see if you jingle. Noble children throw cakes at you to know how you react. One royal mistress asks you to recite poetry to music while balancing a basket on your head. And just like that, you begin your inescapable role as an official fool. They teach you the basics. Never say "Yes, Your Majesty" without following it with a joke. Never perform too well, or you'll be hated. And most importantly, if the king frowns, immediately pretend to faint or trip and somersault your way out of trouble. Some jesters came from circus families. Others were deserters. A few were failed scholars. And in some rare cases, an ex-monk who got kicked out for telling jokes during prayers. Everyone arrived in their strange way, but all ended up the same, living by laughter and sometimes dying without it. You might have talent, but more importantly, you need a naturally ridiculous face. People say you have comedic eyes, meaning you can't look at anything without making it funny. Life at court isn't luxurious. You don't dine with nobles. You eat after them, if anything's left. You sleep in spare rooms, often sharing a bed with 3 other jesters. None of you know who was initially meant to have this job. Sometimes you think, maybe if I say something serious, they'll finally see I'm human too. But you forget, the more seriously you speak, the harder they laugh. One time, you tried to decline a performance out of sheer exhaustion. Word got around. The jester is rehearsing a tragic monologue. Very artistic. You were dragged on stage without your shoes. And yet, there's a glory to it. You might earn a bolt of silk or a roasted duck when you make the king laugh until he spits out his drink. Mimic the queen's accent well enough, and you'll be rewarded with a death stare and an extra performance slot next week. Praise always comes bundled with threat. There's an old story of a jester who made the king laugh during a tense council meeting. The king clapped and declared, "This one's clever," laughing in chaos. A week later, the jester vanished. Rumor said he went on a diplomatic mission, but you know better. There's no round-trip ticket when you're sent on a mission. You've been invited to join an envoy yourself. Your job? Distract during negotiations. Fake a fall when the prince reads treaties. Imitate the prime minister during military talks. Confuse the enemy into wondering whether you're a weapon or a walking disaster. Nobody says it out loud, but sometimes you defuse crises with nothing more than a silly rhyme, a mid-air tumble, or a song about a deranged chicken in the royal council. And somehow, people stop trying to kill each other for a little while. You ask yourself, could I quit this role? But each time you try to walk away, someone shouts, "Hey fool, come here." And you turn back, because you've gotten used to being called fool. That night, you lie in your straw-filled corner, hearing the soft jingle of your cap with every breath. You don't know what tomorrow will demand, who you'll perform for, who you might offend. But you do know this. You've survived one more day in the palace in the only way you know how, by making others laugh. That may be enough. You close your eyes, let out a quiet sigh, and let the tiny bell fade with your heartbeat. You're not a noble, you're not a knight, but you're the last person everyone sees before bed, the one who makes them smile before sleep. And that is magic too. So, you've arrived at the royal court. Music, velvet drapes, polished goblets, and about 5 different kinds of cheese are on every banquet table. From the outside, it all looks like a fairy tale. But from your perspective, as the newly minted court jester, it feels more like a well-decorated trap. You were promised a room in the palace. Technically, that's not a lie. You do have a room. It's located somewhere between the scullery and the royal compost heap. You have 1 pillow, 2 spiders, and a mouse who refuses to share the corner. There's a window that doesn't open, and the view is a wall. Sometimes, if you press your ear against the bricks, you can hear the royal dogs arguing. Sleep is supposed to be when the body rests. But here, sleep happens when the world forgets to need you for a moment. You can't schedule it. You don't get a bedtime. You collapse when the bells stop ringing. Your schedule is not a schedule. It is more like a game of surprise theater roulette. You might be summoned to the Great Hall at dawn to recite a poem about breakfast porridge. At noon, you may be asked to juggle eggs. Someone might wake you at midnight to make funny faces at a nobleman's crying baby. That nobleman is not amused. The baby is. You count that as a win. The thing about being a jester is that you never truly clock out. Even when you're not on stage, people expect you to behave like you are. If you're walking through the corridor and someone says, "Say something funny," you can't say no. You have to say something funny, or at least make a noise that sounds like it came from a chicken with a sore throat. Once, you tried to sneak 5 minutes of quiet in the chapel. A servant found you, asked what you were doing, and you said, "Praying." They replied, "Make the statue laugh." You sighed, bowed to the stone saint, and began performing interpretive dance. The statue did not laugh. Neither did the servant. But the priest said it was the most entertained he had been in months. The court itself never sleeps. At least, not in the way usual places do. It snoozes, stirs, murmurs, and whispers. At any given hour, someone is awake, and that someone might need entertainment. You learn quickly that candles never really go out in this place. They flicker lower, waiting for the subsequent request. Your bell-covered costume becomes a curse after dark. Try sneaking through a silent hallway while dressed as a walking wind chime. Every step announces your location. You develop a shuffle-step hop maneuver, perfected over months, to avoid waking the entire servant wing. The worst is when you are summoned to perform for only half-sober guests. You must appear cheerful, clever, and responsive while they forget your name and call you the funny lad, or that one with the bendy legs. One nobleman once asked you to sing a song about his feet. You did. He cried. It was unclear whether it was from joy or injury. You try to rest during gaps between chaos. 10 minutes behind the curtains. A quick nap in the laundry room. Sometimes you find the best sleep beneath the banquet table, next to crumbs and dreams. One time, you woke up with a roll still stuck to your cheek. Historians still argue whether jesters were beloved companions of the crown or simply convenient distractions for bored nobility? From your point of view, the answer shifts depending on how recently someone has thrown fruit at you. You begin to understand that your presence serves a strange purpose. When tensions are high, they call you in. When arguments break out, you're handed a lute. When someone cries, you are expected to pirouette through the tears. You are not just a performer. You are a buffer, a pressure valve, a glittering distraction on demand. There are moments, rare and brief, when someone thanks you. A chambermaid, a tired guard, even a passing scribe who says your puppet impression of the bishop made his week. Those small nods are more than enough. They remind you that there is still someone worth noticing behind the roll and behind the bells. After all the toasts and tumbles, you crawl into your tiny bed tonight. The mouse is already asleep. The spiders do not mind you anymore. You remove your hat gently, careful not to jingle, and lie back. Your eyes close before your thoughts can finish. Before sleep takes you completely, your thoughts drift. You think about how strange your life is. How laughter, once spontaneous and light, is now scheduled and managed. You think about the old days in your village when jokes were told around a fire for fun, not survival. You wonder if the royal family ever truly sees you. Not the costume, not the act, but you. The person who gets nervous. The one who misses silence. He's the one who sometimes forgets his real name because he's been called fool for so long. But then, just as quickly, you feel the day's weight eases off your shoulders. Not everything has to be profound. Not every smile has to be analyzed. Sometimes laughter is enough. Sometimes surviving is enough. As your breath slows and the palace murmurs fade to a soft hush, you relax into the straw and shadows. You are tired, but you are safe. And in a place like this, that is no minor miracle. By now, you've probably noticed that no one tells the jester when it's mealtime. Meals happen around you, sometimes close to your face, but rarely on your plate. You're not important enough to sit with the nobility, but not lowly sufficient to be invited to the kitchens. You float in the culinary purgatory of the medieval food chain. On good days, you might be tossed a half-eaten chicken leg. On bad days, it's a napkin that smells like gravy. You learn quickly not to be picky. If it's warm, edible, and not actively trying to escape, it's dinner. You once ate a pie used as a prop in a comedic duel. You told yourself the sword probably missed most of it. Food is never guaranteed. Leftovers are the best-case scenario. The hierarchy of medieval dining is clear, and you are somewhere between the dogs and the broken loot. You learn to eat quickly, quietly, and preferably without witnesses. Nothing draws attention like a jester chewing. Once, a noble spotted you eating a biscuit behind the tapestry and declared it the most entertaining performance of the week. You were given a standing ovation for chewing, and then asked to do it again, but with more drama. Some meals come from sympathetic staff. The baker sometimes slips you a burnt roll. The dairymaid once passed you a cup of milk that was so sour that it had already started planning its retirement. Still, it was better than water from the fountain, which occasionally included moss and a drowned beetle. The royal dogs are both your competitors and your closest allies. They have better instincts, faster reflexes, and sharp teeth. You once reached for a discarded ham bone and were met with a low growl from a mastiff who considered you part of the dessert course. Feasts are the worst. Imagine the scent of roasted goose, honeyed figs, and cinnamon-spiced wine drifting across the room, while you stand near the door dressed like a parrot who lost a bet. You're smiling, nodding, clapping, and pretending not to hear your stomach staging a revolt. At these grand banquets, you are expected to perform, not dine. You juggle apples you're not allowed to eat. You balance bread loaves on your head while others devour them with gravy. Once, a roast duck slid off the table and landed at your feet. You looked around, picked it up slowly, locked eyes with the head butler, and returned it. You're still proud of that decision, though you think about the duck at night. Sometimes, the royal children sneak your scraps. A bite of cheese wrapped in a napkin. A single grape handed off with the stealth of a spy. You treat each morsel like treasure, hidden away to be savored when the halls are quiet, and no one expects you to rhyme or twirl. There was one glorious week when a foreign ambassador brought candied almonds. You managed to sneak two. The taste nearly made you cry. You composed an entire ballad about them, though no one ever asked you to perform it. Historians debate whether jesters were allowed at the high tables. Some say they had honorary seats. Others argue they were merely decorative. You have never sat at the high table. You once leaned on it. Someone wiped the spot afterward. When food is short, you get creative. Boiled nettles. Acorn mush. Once, you tried frying a mushroom you found near the stables. It fought back. You still have the scar. Hunger makes you brave. Or foolish. Possibly both. You never complain. At least, not out loud. Complaining gets you labeled the grumpy jester, and no one wants a sad fool. Instead, you smile and joke about eating dreams and roasted hope. People laugh. They don't know you mean it only slightly metaphorically. Your worst food memory was the cabbage stew incident. It was late. You were hungry. A pot sat unattended near the scullery. You helped yourself. The cabbage had fermented into something legendary. Your performance that night included several unscheduled pauses. The nobles thought it was part of the act. You went to bed with regrets. On your best days, someone remembers you exist before dessert. You're handed a slice of tart or a heel of bread. You eat it slowly, relishing every crumb. You find a quiet spot behind a curtain or under a bench and pretend, just for a moment, that you're a noble too. You dream of banquets where you're not part of the entertainment. Tables where your plate arrives full, not as a reward, but as a right. You imagine flavors you've never tasted, and meals you've only sung about in jest. As you curl up in your cot, your stomach is quiet tonight. You had a bit of stew, half a biscuit, and one perfectly ripe plum. You savor the memory of it as much as the fruit itself. Hunger will come again. But for now, you sleep full enough. Before sleep pulls you fully under, you think of food not yet tasted. Warm pastries with jam. Soup that doesn't come with a warning. Meals are eaten slowly, with no performance attached. You smile, barely, at the thought of it. Not because you expect it, but because it is nice to imagine. One day, long after you have danced your last jig, someone will write a verse about you. It was not about the bells or the tricks, but about the fool who once sang about the stew with such passion that it made the cook weep. You shift under the thin blanket, adjusting to the chill that creeps through the stone walls. It's not the hunger that keeps you awake now, but the hum of memory. Of laughter at a jest about onions. Of the warm weight of bread in your pocket. Of the odd comfort of sharing crumbs with a dog who didn't bite you. Being a jester is not about gold or glory. It is about finding joy in the absurd, grace in discomfort, and warmth in unexpected places. Even a biscuit, broken in half and slightly stale, can feel like kindness if given with a smile. And so you let the day go. You let the hunger fade behind gratitude. You let your breathing slow, because tomorrow there will be more performances, nobles, crumbs, and missed meals. But tonight, your belly is just full enough, your heart slightly more so, and your dreams carry the scent of roasted pears. You don't wear clothes as a jester. You wear expectations stitched together with sarcasm. Your outfit is not just fabric. It's a walking punchline. From the moment you step into the court, your clothes do half the performing for you. First, the hat. Oh, the hat. It's shaped like a rooster argued with a windmill. Usually 3 points, sometimes more, and always with bells. The bells jingle every time you move, which is often. They ring when you walk, when you sit, and even when you breathe too sharply. You once sneezed during a sermon and set off a chain of jingles that caused 2 monks to drop their prayer books. Then there's the color. No noble would be caught dead in your palette. Bright yellows, reds, greens, purples, all clashing with the ferocity of a battlefield. Your tunic has more patches than fabric. You look like a child's drawing of a person who lost a bet with a rainbow. And yet, this absurd ensemble is your armor. It tells everyone who you are and what you're meant to be. It protects you by advertising your purpose, I'm not a threat. I'm a joke. But under all that color, you still have skin. Children laugh when they see you. Dogs bark. Drunken lords occasionally throw pieces of bread. Your clothes permit them. No one throws food at the bishop or asks the chamberlain to dance on command, but you are already dressed for it. There's a strange kind of magic in it. The moment you put on the hat, people stop seeing you as a person. You become the role. They talk over you, around you, and sometimes to you like you're a wind-up toy with rhymes and pratfalls for answers. You once tried to talk seriously with a knight about your pay. He replied by asking you to juggle his helmet. You keep a small needle and thread hidden in your quarters because parts of your costume fall apart weakly. One sleeve is held on by hope and 3 stubborn stitches. The bells have been replaced so many times they no longer match. But it's the only outfit you own. Without it, you are no one. There are moments when you catch your reflection on a silver platter and startle yourself. The face is yours, but the person feels unfamiliar. You've become the costume, or the costume has become you. Historians still argue whether jesters chose their outfits or were forced into them. Some say the costumes evolved from theatrical traditions. Others believe they were deliberately designed to humiliate. You have your theory. Someone, somewhere, decided it was easier to laugh at someone who looked ridiculous, and then everyone else just copied the idea. You've tried adjusting the outfit. Once, you sewed a small daisy into your collar. It made one of the handmaids smile. The steward scowled and said it looked too dignified. You removed it. Another time, you tried to wear a cloak to keep warm. A noble accused you of trying to impersonate a magician. You were sent back to your room with a stern warning and a loaf of stale bread, which was confusingly meant to be punishment and dinner. Still, your clothes protect you in odd ways. If you ever said the things you say while dressed in regular tunics, you'd be whipped or worse. But because you're wrapped in bells and color, people laugh instead of drawing swords. You are safe, so long as the joke lands. When you take off the outfit at night, you feel strangely exposed. Nothing is hiding you anymore, just your skin and silence. Once, during a winter feast, you performed with a candle stuck in your cap for dramatic effect. It melted wax down your forehead, but no one noticed. They laughed. Someone told you it was the best part of the evening that night. You nodded, cleaned the burn, and thanked them for noticing. Sometimes the clothes are funny. Sometimes they are heavy. Sometimes they are both. You dream of wearing something simple. A soft tunic, wool leggings that match, a hood without bells. You'd like to walk through the court just once without being mistaken for entertainment. You wonder if people would recognize you without the colors. Then again, that's the point. The outfit lets you disappear behind the character. It gives you space to be brave in ways you never could as yourself. As you fold the costume carefully each night, laying the pieces beside your cot like old friends, you think about how strange it is to find safety in silliness. You smooth the sleeves, pat down the frayed edges, and nestle the hat at the top. The bells tinkle faintly, like a lullaby meant only for fools. You lie beside it, no longer needing it, but not ready to be without it. Sleep comes slowly, warmly, as if the costume still holds you. Before your eyes close, you imagine yourself in a different garment. Not royal robes, not golden cloaks, just something soft and silent. Something without a label or a laugh attached. You imagine walking through the woods in plain brown, unseen and unbothered. You wonder if, without the colors and bells, you'd still know how to make people smile. Would you be brave enough to speak the truth without the shield of humor? Could you say what you mean and not hide behind rhyme? You think about the other jesters you've met. Some were fire, some were quiet, some disappeared without notice. None of them ever left their costumes behind, and maybe that's the way of it. You wear the laughter like a second skin. You've made peace with the sound it brings, not because you have to. The bells rest beside you now. You turn your head, hear their faint rattle, and smile. Tomorrow, they will jingle again. Tomorrow they will protect you. But tonight, they are just ornaments, still and silver. And you, for now, are just a person drifting into sleep. The sharpest weapons in a medieval court are swords or daggers. You'd be wrong. It's words. Always words. And you, dear Jester, wield them daily like juggling knives, each polished with wit, balanced on timing, and thrown with just enough curve to miss, offending, most of the time. No one expects you to start a war, but you could. A misplaced pun about a noble's bald head, a rhyme that sounds too much like the Queen's childhood nickname, and suddenly, alliances crumble. You've seen it happen. You once joked about a duke's hat looking like a roast goose. People laughed. The duke didn't. That winter, his family's wine shipment mysteriously disappeared. You speak in rhyme. You twist words like ribbon. Your jokes hide daggers, and everyone knows it. That's why they laugh with just a touch of caution, eyes narrowed, lips curled, ears perked. In this place, every sentence is a gamble. Every line is a test. And you are both a performer and a spy. Your power lies not in strength, but in subtlety. While knights clash and clerics chant, you craft double meanings. A good jester can insult 3 people in a single sentence and still be invited to dinner. You once rhymed royal nose with garden hose and were applauded for your cleverness. Later, the gardener gave you a wink. The king, thankfully, did not catch on. Some courtiers test you. They say things like, "Make fun of me, fool." This is a trap. If you are too gentle, they call you dull. If you go too far, you may find yourself reassigned to latrine cleaning duty or performing at the children's table. You've learned to aim your arrows carefully. Never too deep, never too direct. There are days when your words dance. You feel unstoppable. The crowd leans in, giggling at every line. You improvise, slipping in stories about imaginary animals or royal ghosts. You once made an entire dining hall weep with laughter by reciting a poem from the point of view of a pigeon trapped in the chapel. And then there are the other days where jokes fall flat, smiles tighten, laughter stalls. You feel each pause like a stumble. Your confidence, so easy to wear the night before, crumples in your hands. You retreat with a bow and a smile, then spend the rest of the evening replaying every syllable. Words can be dangerous, but they can also save you. Once, you accidentally called a baron's new horse that wheezing mop with hooves. Gasps filled the hall. You followed up with a timed limerick about noble steeds and strange barnyard romances. The baron laughed so hard he fell off his chair. The moment passed. You lived to just another day. Historians still argue whether jesters served as truth-tellers or just living decorations. You know the answer is both. There are things only you can say. The noble who taxes too harshly, the priest who naps during sermons, the lady who sings off-key but insists on solos. You mention them in passing, wrapped in jokes, sweetened with rhymes. If they protest, you grin and shrug. Just a jest. Just a line. But you know the truth. They listen. Everyone listens. Sometimes, the king leans back and nods at something you say, as if hearing it for the first time. Not from his advisors, not from his guards, but from you, the fool in motley, with the sharpest tongue in the room. Still, it wears on you. Keeping everyone amused is exhausting. You never know when the joke will go too far. You don't get to rehearse. You don't get retakes. One wrong word could undo a year of careful charm. So you rehearse in your head, even in sleep. You dream in puns. There are quiet moments when you wish for silence. Not the absence of sound, but the absence of needing to be clever. A moment when your mouth can rest and no one expects brilliance or mockery. You wonder what it would be like to have a conversation that doesn't rhyme, to speak plainly without someone laughing before you finish. Once, you whispered a simple thank you to the scullery maid who gave you extra bread. She looked startled, unsure how to respond when you weren't being funny. It struck you how few people have heard your voice when it isn't shaping a joke. Your words are your livelihood, your shield, your net, your leash. They carry you, protect you, and trap you. You are praised for your wit, but rarely listened to unless it comes wrapped in performance. It is both power and prison, Before bed, you sometimes write lines you'll never say aloud in your head. Not because they're too risky, but because they're too honest. Not everything needs an audience. Tonight, your voice is quiet. The bells have stopped. The jokes are folded away beside your costume. You lie in the dark, letting silence fill your lungs instead of words. In your dreams, you sometimes walk through a field where no one knows your name. You speak freely, not to entertain but to connect. There is no laughter, no applause, no pressure to be clever. Just the sound of your words, simple, landing softly in the air. You imagine sitting at a table with no need to perform, no riddles, no rhymes, just bread and quiet company. You think about how peaceful that must feel. Not better, perhaps, just different. But when you wake, the court will be there. The expectations will return. And so will the stage. You will rise, dress in color, and polish your phrases again because words are what you have and know what you do. And even if they exhaust you or hide you, they have saved you more times than you can count. There's a strange truth no one tells you when you become a jester. You don't belong anywhere. You're too visible for the servants, ridiculous for the nobility, and unpredictable for the clergy. You exist in between, hovering like smoke, noticed, used, but never truly included. You eat alone. You sleep alone. You perform in front of people who laugh at your jokes but never ask your name. When you hear your name, it's usually preceded by fool and followed by a command. Dance, sing, spin, jest, then disappear. The servants don't trust you. They think you're spying for the lords. The lords don't trust you either. They believe you gossip with the staff. The truth is, you barely speak when you're not performing. Not because you don't want to, but because you're never quite sure how much of you is real anymore. Even your laughter feels like someone else's sometimes. It's an odd kind of invisibility. Everyone sees you, but no one sees you. You can walk through the great hall in your full jester gear, and people will chuckle, toss crumbs, and maybe call for a song. But they frown if you walk through the same hall in a plain tunic. They squint. They ask who let you in. Once, during a winter festival, you helped the cook stir stew for an hour. When someone saw you holding the ladle, they gasped and dragged you out by the sleeve, insisting you were spoiling the magic. It is as if magic only worked when your clothes jingled. You've shared jokes with guards in the dead of night, only to be ignored the next morning. You've helped the steward rehearse his speech in rhyme, only to be scolded for making fun of serious matters. You're a guest everywhere and a resident nowhere. Historians often say jesters moved freely through social ranks. That's one way of putting it. You do move, constantly. But it's not freedom. It's orbit. You circle the edges like a moon with no planet. Your cot is not in the servants' quarters. It's not near the nobles either. You sleep in the seams of the palace, a space between spaces, a broom closet with ambition. You once tried to join the servants for supper. You sat quietly, took the last spot on the bench, and didn't say a word. A maid whispered something. A stable boy chuckled. After 10 minutes, no one looked at you. After 20, you got up and left. The stew had gone cold anyway. Belonging isn't about where you sleep or eat. It's about being missed. You could vanish for 3 days, and the first question anyone would ask is, who's going to juggle the apples tonight? There are moments of warmth, a glance from the librarian when you help her rhyme catalogs, a crooked smile from a cook when your knees creak after a long show. The boy who guards the West Tower once gave you a boiled egg without saying a word. That egg tasted better than any feast. But moments are not places. They don't hold you. They pass like stage lights, fading. You begin to wonder who you are outside the performance. What would be left if the colors came off and the hat disappeared? A name barely used. A face most people know only while laughing. A voice that rhymes more easily than it rests. You are always performing. Even in silence, you feel watched. Not because they care, but because they expect something. Once, a noblewoman asked if you ever tired of smiling. You replied with a grin and said, "Only when I sleep." She laughed. But you weren't joking. Historians still argue whether jesters enjoyed special status or suffered quiet isolation. You don't need the debate. You live the answer. Some days, you are the life of the court. On other days, you're a shadow no one notices unless it's time for entertainment. At night, you lie in bed and try remembering the last time someone spoke to you without expecting a laugh. It takes longer each time. The quiet feels bigger. Not peaceful, just wide. You should write a letter once. To whom, you're not sure. You tear it up halfway through. Not out of shame, but out of uncertainty. What do you even sound like when you're not being funny? Still, tomorrow will come. The court will gather. And you will smile, bow, and rhyme. You will juggle, jest, and dance. You will float once more between worlds, between people, between roles. But tonight, you are still. Not a servant, not a noble, not a fool. Just someone who hopes to be remembered, even when the laughter stops. You sometimes walk into a room in your dreams and someone waves you over, not for a show or a joke, but to sit. You imagine what it feels like to be welcomed without performance. A place at the table, not as decoration, but as company. You think about the village you came from. You remember faces, but names are fading. You wonder if anyone there remembers yours, or if you were always meant to be temporary, moving from court to court like wind through the halls. There's freedom in not belonging. You can observe everything, slip through rooms unseen, hear secrets meant for others. But there's also loneliness. No home to return to. No arms waiting after the stage lights dim. And yet, you endure. You make people laugh. You ease tension. You give the court moments of joy, however brief. That counts for something. As sleep pulls at your thoughts, you whisper your name. Just once. Just for you. It's not funny. It's not clever. But it feels real. Outside, the wind hums against the stone walls. Inside, you lie curled beneath a blanket that barely reaches your knees. But for once, you feel seen. Not by the court, crowd, or yourself. You are not just a fool. Not just the laughter. Not just the color. You are the one who watches. The one who listens. The one who remembers. And tonight, in this sliver of stillness, that is enough. You are not a person. You are an accessory, an ornament. A walking burst of noise and color exists to decorate moments others find dull. They don't clap for you out of admiration. They clap because it's expected. You're the part of the evening that fills the silence between roasted goose and scandalous gossip. They tug at your sleeves like you're a puppet. Do the voice, they say. Sing the one about the goat. You smile. You perform. You pretend their fingers aren't digging into your arm. They don't ask. They pull. They produced. They expect. And you are expected to enjoy it. They frown if you hesitate. If your grin falters, your knees creak, or you forget a rhyme. They tilt their heads like a broken toy just clattered to the floor. The illusion is cracked. Suddenly, you're not fun. You're not charming. You're disappointing. And no one likes a disappointing fool. Once, a nobleman's child smeared jam on your face during a feast. Everyone laughed. You were asked to make pig noises, so you did. The child clapped. The nobles toasted. You wiped the jam off with a linen napkin and bowed like it was the proudest moment of your life. Another time, you tripped over a dog during a performance. Your shin is bruised. Your hat flew off. A cup shattered. Everyone roared with laughter. You were limping for 3 days, but the Lord called it the best comedy he'd seen all season. No one asked if you were all right. The show had gone well. That was all that mattered. Historians still argue whether jesters were mistreated or merely misunderstood. If they'd like to listen, you could settle that debate in one evening. Most wouldn't. They'd rather imagine you as joyful. It's easier to laugh when you believe the performer is laughing with you. not at the pain under the paint. Your body is not your own. It is a vessel for amusement, a tool for others' moods. You've been lifted, thrown, spun, and paraded like a carnival prize. You've danced with bruised ribs. You've sung through headaches. You've smiled while hungry. The court doesn't notice. Or worse, they do, and find it all the more delightful. You begin to anticipate it. The pokes, the orders, the way their eyes scan you like a toy left on the floor. You learn when to duck, when to twirl, when to laugh louder than the insult meant to sting. You master the timing of survival. Once, a drunk baron pulled you onto the table and asked you to bark like a hound. You did. He poured wine on your head. It trickled down your neck, cold and sticky. You stayed in character. You howled. Everyone laughed. The queen dabbed at her eyes with a lace kerchief, and she laughed so hard. Later, you peeled dried fruit from your sleeve and rinsed your tunic with cold water. The dog didn't bark that night. You did. There are moments when it all blurs, when you're not sure where the performance ends and the humiliation begins. You tell yourself it's fine. You're paid, housed, clothed. That's more than many can say. But some nights, even your reflection winces. And yet, you return. Every time. Because you have to. Because this is your place. Because if you stop dancing, who are you? You wonder sometimes if they'd notice if you didn't show up. Suppose you sat out one evening. If you stayed behind the curtain and let the silence settle in. Would they miss your bells? Your bow? Or would someone else wear the colors tomorrow just as loudly? You keep a small pouch under your pillow. Inside are 3 buttons from past costumes, a smoothed pebble from the river near your childhood home, and a scrap of parchment with your name written on it. Not fool, not buffoon, just your name. The one you barely hear anymore. Historians write about the laughter. They forget the quiet that follows. The moment when the hall is empty, your smile fades, your back aches, and your cheeks sting from holding your expression too long. Tonight, you sit on the edge of your cot and breathe. No commands, no clapping. Just the sound of wind brushing stone. You're not a toy. You are not a trinket. You are tired. You are tender. You are still here. And for tonight, that is enough. In your dreams, you're not laughed at. You're listened to. Your hands are not pulled. Your hat is not grabbed. And no one points when you walk by. You sit on a bench under a tree, and someone joins you to talk. They ask you about your day, not your tricks. You imagine what it feels like to walk into a room and not have to smile first. To exist without performance. To be enough simply by being. You wonder what joy might feel like without effort. What kindness feels like when it isn't wrapped in a joke. And then you let that go. The court will always ask more than you have. They will always want one more song, one more twirl, one more laugh. But in the quiet after, you reclaim something. A moment, a breath, a name. So tonight, as the palace fades into silence, you lie still beneath your thin blanket. The bells are silent. The mask is off. The bruises are yours, and so is the peace. You made them laugh. But now, it is your turn to rest. You shift under your blanket, adjusting to the cool air that leaks through the stone. Your body aches, but not from movement, more from memory. Each laugh you gave was a piece handed over, and now, alone, you collect the pieces back. You hum softly, not for anyone, not for applause, to hear a sound that belongs to you. In a palace full of clamor, this hush feels like a miracle. No one is calling your name. No one is yanking your sleeve. Just breath, stillness, and the slow curl of sleep at the edges. You will rise again tomorrow. Put on the bells, wear the smile, play the role. But for now, you are not a fool. You are a soul resting in borrowed silence. And that is enough. It's not the laughter that haunts you. It's the whispers. You're used to being the punchline. You've made peace with that. But when the jokes stop, The hall grows quiet, and the goblets are drained. Something colder settles in. That's when they start talking about you like you're not there. Because in their eyes, you're not. You've heard it all. Snickering from behind goblets, murmurs by the hearth, voices half hidden behind fans. Do you think the fool even understands what he says? He's clever, yes, but in a trained parrot kind of way. I wonder if he sleeps in that ridiculous hat. They don't mean for you to hear, but they don't mind if you do. You walk past them in corridors and hear your name used like seasoning, sprinkled on conversations for a bit of flavor. Sometimes it's about your clothes. Sometimes your posture is. Once, it was about your laugh. Too sharp, someone said. Like he's not really laughing, just trying to show us he can. They laugh at that too. You try not to care. You tell yourself you don't. You've built walls out of rhymes, armor out of irony, but their words still get through. Not like swords, more like frost. Slow, creeping, quiet. Enough to chill you even in a warm room. They don't know how much you hear. How much do you remember? You're always there, even when you're not seen. Under tables, behind curtains, near fireplaces, waiting for your cue. You've become fluent in what people say when they think no one's listening. Historians often write that jesters had keen ears and were privy to secrets. That's putting it politely. You are a walking collection of things better left unsaid. You've heard a countess sob to her maid about a lost child. You've listened to a bishop slur gossip about the queen's cousin after too much wine. You know whose marriage is cracking, who's hiding debts, who plots to leave, who plots to rise. And still, they treat you like a fool. Because to them, you're safe. Your hat jingles, your shoes flap. Surely someone like that couldn't possibly understand court politics or family betrayals. Surely someone who dances for the coin couldn't carry the weight of all their secrets. But you do. You keep them stored like poems in the back of your mind. You carry them with care, not out of kindness, but because they're all you have. You're not trusted with wealth, or power, or affection, but you are trusted, unwittingly, with truth. Sometimes, it almost feels like a game. You know things they don't know. You know. You could ruin people with a single verse. You could recite a rhyme about the Chamberlain's nighttime habits and bring down an entire estate. But you don't. Because power is not in the saying, it's in the knowing. Once, you made a joke that landed too close to someone's shame. It was about shoes. Just shoes. But the noble turned pale. You never repeated the line. But you remembered the way the room went quiet. The way they looked at you. Not like a fool, but like something dangerous. That's the thing they forget. Fools are always watching. And fools remember. They remember every insult wrapped in silk. Every name is spoken with a curl of the lip. Every snort disguised as a chuckle. You remember the ones who defended you too. The young scribe who stood up for your verse when others called it childish. The cook who corrected a noble who mocked your limp. The maid who left a flower on your pillow without a word. Those kindnesses glow in your mind like candlelight on cold nights. Still, the whispers return. They always do. You learn to let them wash over you, like wind over stone. You sit very still and let the words move past. You don't react. You don't flinch. You listen. And that, more than anything, unnerves them. Because they're never quite sure what you'll do with what you know. At night, you lie in your cot and replay the whispers. Not to wound, but to understand. You pick apart the tones, the silences, the hesitation behind laughter. You wonder if they gossip about everyone this way, or just the ones they think can't fight back. You whisper your thoughts in reply. Not for revenge, to hear your voice unmocked. Sometimes, you imagine standing in the center of the court and reciting everything you've ever heard. Not with malice, but with precision. A list of truths delivered like lullabies. But you don't. because they wouldn't hear the truth beneath the rhyme. Instead, you speak softly to the walls. You make poems from their carelessness, sonnets from their betrayals, ballads from their offhand cruelties. Not to perform, not to punish, to make sense of it. You write it all in your head. No parchment, no ink, just memory, layered and folded like a secret map. You know your place. You walk the edges of every room. You wear your costume like armor and your smile like a key. And still, they whisper. Tonight, the hall is quiet. The voices are gone, but their echoes remain. You close your eyes and imagine a world where people speak of you with warmth, not wonder. Your name isn't followed by laughter, and you don't have to listen so closely to survive. You curl under your blanket and let the day's weight fall away. Your body is still, your mind quiet but alert, storing fragments of speech like notes in a melody only you can hear. You are not what they say behind closed doors. You are not the joke they pass between bites of venison. You are not their toy, their gossip, their easy story. You are the listener. And in a world so loud and careless, that might be the most powerful thing. Laughter might be your trade, but it's also your risk. Because in the medieval court, one wrong joke isn't just embarrassing. It's deadly. You've dodged more danger than a knight in a joust, and all with a smile plastered on your face. You'd think juggling apples would be harmless, but one day you juggled pears instead, because the apples were bruised, and the Duke's favorite hound caught a pear midair. The dog choked. The Duke wept. You nearly lost your head, and not metaphorically. The only thing that saved you was a quick-witted limerick about dogs, divine intervention, and overripe fruit. The room laughed. The tension cracked. You bowed, still pale, still sweating. That night, you slept with a spoon under your pillow. Not for comfort, for defense. There was the time you made a pun about a lord's haircut. Harmless, you thought. It was a breezy jest during a feast, rhyming noble crown with balding down. The laughter around the table bloomed, except at the top. The lord's face didn't change, but his cupbearer did not pour you any more wine that night. The next morning, your boots were missing, and your food tasted like soap. You didn't say another word about hair for 3 years. Historians still debate how much power jesters truly had. Were you untouchable or dangling above a pit with a rope made of puns? You know the truth. You were tolerated like a candle, pleasant at dinner but quick to snuff if it burned too bright. Once you told a joke that mirrored a scandal in the court. It wasn't on purpose. You'd heard a whisper here, a murmur there, and built a rhyme around it. The room froze. The steward dropped his goblet. You finished with a bow that felt more like a prayer. No one clapped. No one smiled. That night, you found a dead crow on your windowsill. You buried it with shaking hands. You've learned that every jest is a blade. The trick is to make it shine without drawing blood. But hands slip. Audiences change. What's funny one day is treason the next. Sometimes it's not the nobles you have to fear. It's the audience, the drunk knights, the visiting dignitaries. The boy had something to prove and too much mead in his blood. You once joked about a local baron's accent, thinking he'd gone to bed. He hadn't. He stood red-faced, staggered toward you, and challenged you to a duel. You blinked. You bowed. You offered him a juggling lesson instead. The court laughed. He did not. You still have a scar on your shoulder from where his goblet struck you. But you can't stop. You can't hesitate. Timing is everything. If you pause too long, the laughter dries up. If you speak too quickly, you might reveal more than you intend. It's a dance, but you move to the rhythm of mood, ego, and shifting alliances instead of music. Even the king is not safe territory, especially the king. You must praise without flattery, mock without insult. Once you jested about his hunting skills. He laughed, but only because he thought you were talking about someone else. You corrected him gently. He did not laugh again. That was the week you were reassigned to muck detail in the stables. You learned how to clean hooves with one hand and balance a chicken with the other. You never joked about hunting again. There's no armor for what you do. There's no shield for the wrong phrase. You walk a tightrope made of tone and timing, with nothing beneath but consequences. You dream, sometimes, of saying what you want, of telling a room full of nobles exactly what you think of their powdered tempers and perfumed cruelty. But even in dreams, you stop short. You rhyme your truth. You twist it into riddles. You've learned to protect yourself with wit and weave your honest thoughts behind curtains of comedy. Historians sometimes romanticize the Jester as a truth-teller, a brave soul who spoke boldly while others cowered. Perhaps that was true. Once. Possibly in rare moments, you catch the wind just right and land a joke that lets a truth slip through. But more often, you speak carefully. You rehearse every line. You toss and turn in your cot, mumbling variations of the same pun until it sounds safe, until it sounds survivable. You laugh first, just in case no one else does. Tonight, as you lie down and let the chill of stone settle in your spine, you think about all the times laughter nearly became your last breath. You breathe slowly. You whisper a rhyme to the dark, soft, and harmless. And for now, no one throws a goblet. No one draws a blade. No one sends a message written in feathers. Only silence answers. You turn on your side, pressing your cheek into the pillow, and smile slightly. You made it through another day. Tomorrow, you'll smile again. Because the danger isn't over, but neither are you. Before sleep takes you, you recall the faces that almost ended you. Some still walk the halls. Some are buried with polished stones and grand epitaphs that say nothing about their tempers. But you remember. And you remember the ones who laughed with gentleness. The merchant's daughter who once brought you a flower after a show. The aging knight who whispered that your joke about his knees was the best laugh he'd had in years. The page boy who clapped too hard and made you feel, if only for a moment, like a real performer. You carry those too, like charms, like reasons to keep balancing that narrow edge between delight and disaster. So you sleep, still dressed, just in case you're needed. Your dreams smell of sawdust and sweat, of near misses and second chances, and of applause, soft, tentative, but enough. Enough to wake for, enough to return to, enough to risk the joke one more time. The crowd loves you, until it doesn't. There's no silence more terrifying than the one that follows a bad joke. You deliver the line, expecting a wave of laughter, and instead, you get blinking, a rustle of clothing, a throat being cleared, and worst of all, the sound of a single fork scraping a plate. It's not anger. Anger would be easier. Anger has heat. This is worse. This is cold. This is judgment wrapped in disinterest. This is the slow realization that you are no longer entertaining. And in your world, that is the greatest sin of all. You felt it before. That moment when the room turns from warm to watchful. When the audience, once leaning in, begins to lean back. Their smiles fade. Their eyes wander. You feel your heartbeat in your ears and wonder if they can hear it too. You try to recover. You toss in a quick impression, maybe a silly jig, something harmless and absurd, a backup laugh, a mercy chuckle. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Once, during a summer feast, you told a story that had always been a favorite in other courts, a tale of a goose, a bishop, and an unfortunate barrel. By the end, you were sweating. The punchline landed with a dull thud. The only sound in the hall was someone sipping soup. You bowed. No one clapped. You bowed again. A single nobleman sneezed. That night, you paced your quarters for hours, whispering the story to yourself, line by line, trying to hear what went wrong. You never found it, but you never told that story again. Historians talk about the jester's role in bringing joy. They don't mention the nights when joy refuses to arrive. Failure clings. It wraps around you tighter than your motley cloak. You carry it into the next performance and the one after that. It lives in your throat, just behind your tongue, a weight you must swallow every time you step on stage. You learn to scan the crowd as you speak. You watch for warning signs, crossed arms, tilted heads, tapping fingers against goblets. You become a master of mood, but even masters stumble. The worst part isn't the failure itself. It's what it means. In the court, your worth is measured in chuckles. When they stop laughing, they start questioning. Why are you here? What do you bring? What use is a fool who cannot make people forget their troubles? And when they ask those questions, dangerous answers start to form. A young squire approached you one night after a particularly dry performance. He smiled kindly, perhaps too kindly, and said, "That was brave. Not good, not funny, just brave." You nodded, thanked him, and went back to your chamber, where you sat silently and stared at the wall for an hour. The crowd is never cruel with knives. Their weapon is absent. Laughter withheld, attention withdrawn. They don't boo, they forget. So you try harder. You prepare more. You polish every line until it shines, and then it sings. You rehearse in empty rooms, reciting to broomsticks and candle stubs. You pace like a general before battle, rehearsing punchlines like tactics. You beg the gods, whichever ones might listen, for timing, grace, and a laugh that feels like a rescue. But sometimes, even your best isn't enough. The court is tired. The wine is intense. The gossip is better than your act. The crowd drifts, and you are left adrift with it. You pretend not to notice. You keep going. You finish strong. You bow deeply as though the silence were applause in disguise. Then you leave the hall and let your shoulders drop. You peel off the colors. You sit down slowly as if the floor might vanish beneath you. Historians write about the jester's courage. They forget how lonely it is to stand in a crowd and feel invisible. Tonight, your bed feels colder. Not because of the weather, but because of that silence still clinging to your skin. You hum softly, trying to remember when you made them laugh without effort. You fail, but the tune remains. And sometimes, a tune is enough to carry you to morning. You remind yourself that even the best jesters stumble. Even the brightest stars flicker. You are not your worst night. You are the rhythm between laughter and silence. The breath before the following line. The heart that keeps showing up. You curl beneath your blanket, tuck your hands beneath your chin, and whisper a rhyme to yourself. Not because anyone needs to hear it, but because it feels familiar. Steady. Yours. The hall will fill again. The goblets will rise. The torches will flicker. And you will step forward, bells ringing, words ready. But for now, the only crowd is the hush of night. And it does not ask you to be clever. It only asks you to rest. And so, you do. You think of the faces in the crowd, those who smiled sincerely, even briefly. You let their kindness outweigh the empty chairs and half-hearted claps. You remind yourself that applause is fleeting, but your presence is not. You were there. You gave your best. You dared to stand and speak when others sat in silence. That has to count for something. And as your breathing slows and your thoughts grow softer, you let go of the silence. You let go of the crowd. You drift towards sleep, not as a fool or failure, but as someone who tried. And tomorrow, you'll try again. Rain is supposed to wash things clean, but in your world it only makes the colors bleed. Your costume soaks up water like a sponge. The red runs into the yellow. The blue stains your skin. You look like a wet painting left out too long. No one claps for a soggy fool. You've performed in the rain more times than you can count. Festivals don't stop for the weather. Neither do crowds. They huddle under canopies, wait for you to slip on wet cobblestones, and call it a comedy. You bow. You grin. You shiver. The mud clings to your boots and your cuffs. You wipe your face with sleeves already soaked. You spin through puddles and hope no one notices how your teeth chatter. Once, during a spring festival, you slipped so hard your hat flew off and landed in a horse's trough. The crowd roared. Children pointed. You bowed, water dripping from your eyebrows, and someone shouted, "Do it again." as if pain were a trick you rehearsed. You smiled and did it again. Historians still argue whether jesters were laughed with or laughed at. You know the answer. It depends on the weather. On sunny days, you feel like a part of the celebration. On rainy ones, you feel like the entertainment no one would fetch if lost. Your costume never truly dries. The hem is always damp. You've walked into halls trailing wet footprints like a ghost with bells. Once, a maid mistook you for a mop. The worst part isn't the water, it's what it reveals. Rain makes everything honest. Mud shows where you've been. Wet cloth clings to what you'd rather hide. Your knees, your ribs, your shivers. No amount of laughter masks how cold it makes you fold in on yourself. You once tried to perform barefoot after losing a boot in a puddle. It was supposed to be funny. "Look, the fool's gone rustic," someone joked. But the cobblestones were sharp. You bled through the soles. That night, you couldn't sleep from the sting. There is no glamour in soggy clothes. There is no dignity in slipping for applause. You make them laugh, yes. But part of you wonders if it's you they're seeing, or just the absurd shape you've become when soaked and stumbling. And still, you return. You step out under gray skies, bells already damp, hoping for even one genuine laugh that isn't born from pity. The rain finds its way into everything. Your shoes squish when you walk. Your fingers prune like overcooked fruit. Your breath fogs, and your nose drips. Still, someone calls for a song. You sing, your voice thin and frayed, barely heard over the patter of water on canvas. Sometimes the nobles don't even look at you. They keep talking, drinking, and letting the jester blend into the noise of the weather. Your performance becomes background. Rain and fool, equally ignored. Historians write that jesters were resilient. That may be true, but they forget the small tolls, the slow erosion. The way cold seeps into the bone makes you wonder why you still care if anyone laughs. You do care, though. You always care. Because laughter means you're real. It means someone sees you. Even if just for a moment, even through the drizzle. Once, an older woman handed you a cloth after a rain-soaked show. It was patched and thin, but warm. She didn't speak. She just placed it in your hands and walked away. You still have that cloth. It smells like time and smoke and something like kindness. You wrap it around your shoulders on nights like this. Nights when the rain hasn't fallen, but the memory of it lingers. You sit by your small hearth, steam rising from your sleeves as they dry. Your skin prickles with the warmth, and your thoughts wander to all the times you danced on slick stone and hoped your grin hid the slipping. Historians never mention how heavy wet bells become, or how long it takes to scrub the stains from a costume. No one believes you wash yourself. You hum as you patch a torn seam, fingers numb but steady. You don't need applause tonight. Just silence. Just dry socks. Just a little space to feel human again. Outside, the clouds gather. You listen to the wind nudge the shutters, knowing tomorrow may bring more puddles, more splashes, more pretending not to mind. But for now, you are warm. You are quiet. You are dry. And that is enough. You close your eyes and let your breathing match the soft creak of the roof beams. You picture yourself, not drenched or mocked, but simply walking through the rain, head high, unseen. Just a figure beneath the sky, with no one asking for a song or a stumble. You imagine a world where you can laugh without being expected to, where wet clothes don't mean failure, where silence after a joke isn't a sentence but a pause, a breath. That image carries you towards sleep, like a dry blanket pulled slowly over your thoughts. Tomorrow, you will step into the rain again, but tonight, you rest beneath a roof that holds. And for once, that is enough. Remember when a noble compared your soaked figure to a drowned cat? Everyone laughed. You laughed too. But when the hall emptied, and your costume clung to you like shame, you sat by the fire and didn't move for hours. It's strange how people forget that fools feel cold, that you bleed, that rain doesn't bounce off you just because you wear bells and paint. Sometimes, even you forget. You go through the motions. You joke. You tumble. You ache. And still, you return. You return because sometimes someone in the back laughs for real. Because sometimes, even in the rain, a child claps with both hands and no pretense. Because sometimes a maid meets your eyes and sees more than the motley. You perform for them, for the ones who see the fool and the man beneath. So when the thunder rolls and the summons come again, you'll go. Not because you have to, but deep down, you still hope your laughter might mean more than distraction. Even soaked, even stained, even now. The flame flickers, and you think it's dancing for you for a moment. You sit alone, legs crossed on a creaky stool, in a corner where the shadows soften. One candle, on reflection, one fool. The laughter has faded, the bells are silent, no one's calling your name. And now comes the part of the evening you never rehearse. The part where you're not expected to be funny. The part where you start to wonder who you are when no one's watching. By day, you're the fool, the jester, the walking joke. You know the roles, the mimics, the ditties, the pratfalls timed to perfection. You know which lord likes his humor bawdy, which lady prefers it clever, which child laughs at silly faces. You carry them all like masks in your sleeves. But here, under candlelight, there's no mask to wear, no laughter to shield behind. Just you. You. And the growing quiet that settles into the room like dust. You look at your hands, rough from juggling, scarred from tumbles, ink-stained from rhymes. They don't look like a fool's hands. They look like a craftsman's, a weaver of moments, a mender of moods. Sometimes you wonder if they even know you have a name. Not fool, not jester. Just the one your mother gave you years before anyone asked you to make them laugh. You whisper it sometimes to keep it from vanishing. It feels strange in your mouth, like a song you haven't sung in too long. Historians often speak of jesters as characters, colorful, chaotic, comedic. They rarely mention the silences between acts, the space where the paint peels and the bell-stitched cap comes off. You try to remember who you were before the court, before the colors and the noise. You see flashes, bare feet on a mossy stone, a stream that whispered songs only you could hear, a lullaby hummed by someone with tired eyes and warm hands. You were curious once, gentle, quiet. Now you are loud, not by choice, but by profession. Every laugh you summon feels like you're pushing something further down, piling performance over personhood, and covering something soft with something that shines. You catch your reflection in the candle's flicker. The shadows curve your face into something unfamiliar. Not monstrous, not sad, just not yours. You tell yourself this is fine. You tell yourself this is the price of laughter. But even you don't laugh at that joke anymore. Once, a young scribe asked if you ever wished to be someone else. You shrugged. I told him you'd rather be someone more interesting. He smiled. You didn't. He thought you were joking. You weren't. Sometimes you dream you're on stage, but no one's watching. You speak, dance, tumble, sing, and the room is empty. There is no applause, no audience, no reason, and yet you keep performing. Because what else would you do? What else would you be? You lean closer to the flame. It dances still, unaware of your gaze. You wonder if it too gets tired of performing, bending, bowing, flickering on command. There's comfort in this moment. No crowd, nigh jest, no judgment. Just the crackle of the wick and the hum of your breath. You reach for your little book of verses. Not the one you use in court. The other one. The hidden one. The one with half-finished thoughts and rhymes meant only for you. The pages curl from use, and the ink is smudged, but it feels real. More real than the bells. You read a line aloud. It's not clever, not funny, just true. And that, tonight, feels like a gift. Historians rarely mention a jester's inner world. They write about your antics, satire, and role in court diplomacy. They forget you're also someone who sits with a flickering flame and wonders what remains when the paint washes away. Tonight, You let that wondering settle like dust. You don't chase answers. You sit. Because in this soft quiet, there's a kind of truth. That may be enough. You close your little book and exhale slowly. The candle flickers again, casting a brief halo that makes your shadow bow on the wall. Even your silhouette knows the routine. You smile faintly. Not because something is funny, but because it isn't. Because in this small, unlit moment, you are no one's fool. And that feels like something worth smiling about. You lie back on your cot, arms behind your head. You trace the wooden beams above with tired eyes. You think about tomorrow. The jests. The bows. The mask you'll pick up again. But for now, you breathe without performance. You exist without an audience. Tomorrow, you will become the fool again. But tonight, beneath the flickering light of a stubby candle, you are yourself. And that, in its quiet way, is beautiful. Sleep comes slowly, not out of exhaustion, but out of surrender. You no longer chase it. You let it arrive in its own time, like a kind guest who knocks instead of barging in. Your thoughts blur into the candle's rhythm. The wax pools, the wick leans, and the light softens. You feel the weight of your presence, and it does not feel heavy. Tonight, you are not lost behind laughter. You are found in the quiet after. And somewhere deep in the warmth of stillness, you begin to dream. Not of crowds, capers, or clapping hands, but of yourself, uncostumed. And you sleep whole. Not all eyes in the castle look down on you. Some glance sideways, cautious but kind. Some meet yours in passing and hold your gaze a second longer than custom allows. These aren't lords or ladies. These are hands calloused by buckets, backs bent by trays. These are the castle's quiet shadows. These people see you, not just the colors you wear or the noise you make, but the tiredness behind your jokes. And in them, you've found something you never expected at court. Friendship. It begins quietly. A kitchen boy slipping you an extra heel of bread after a long performance. A laundry maid darning your torn sleeve without asking. A stable hand offering a dry place to sit during a storm. Not inside, but under the awning, where the hay stays dry enough. None of them laugh too loudly at your jokes. None of them clap with the nobles. But they notice the limp you hide. They notice when your voice cracks from too much shouting. They notice when you stop singing on days that feel too heavy. You share stories with them, not performances. They tell you about missing sheep, broken latches, and who dropped a pie before the steward. You tell them where you hide your sweets, and they pretend not to know when one goes missing. A girl in the scullery braids your hair sometimes when you sit too long by the fire. She doesn't say much, but her hands are gentle, and the braid never pulls. There's a boy in the stables who once fixed the bell on your cap with wire and patience, tongue poking out of the side of his mouth as he worked. You paid him with a rhyme about horses and farts. He said it was worth it. Historians don't write about these people. Not often. Their names vanish, lost in the margins. But they're the ones who keep the castle standing. And the Jester, too. One night, when you returned to your quarters soaked and silent, a tray had already been left by your door. Not from the kitchens, not part of the regular meal. Someone's supper, half a heel of cheese, 2 boiled eggs, and a folded scrap of cloth for a napkin. You never found out who left it. Another time, you were called to perform for a visiting baroness. You made her laugh, big, loud, echoing laughs filling the hall. Later that night, your slipper tore. You muttered under your breath in the corridor, and the baroness passed by without a glance. But the page who lit the torches that evening knelt and helped you tie it with a bit of ribbon from his sleeve. These are the moments that stick. Not the roaring crowds, not the noble's applause, but the boy who offered silence when you needed it. The girl who slipped a coin into your palm on a day when your hands trembled too much to juggle. Sometimes, you wonder if these people see more than anyone else. If being close to the ground lets them sense what the lords, perched on chairs with golden feet, cannot. They don't ask for a show. They ask if you've eaten. And when they laugh, it sounds like home. Once, when illness swept through the castle and the court fell quiet, you were left off the schedule for 3 days. No shows, no summons, no clapping. You sat by the hearth, staring at your boots. Then, the cook's apprentice appeared with broth. No words, just a nod. He set it down and walked away. You held that bowl like it was a treasure. Historians often credit jesters with surviving by wit alone. But you know better. You survived because someone mended your socks. Because someone shared their corner of warmth. Because someone remembered you weren't just there to entertain, but to exist. They know your real name. Not all of them, but enough. And when you perform and spot them at the edges of the hall, leaning against door frames, holding pitchers, carrying trays, you give them an extra wink, a sharper rhyme, a secret joke meant just for them. They never react too much. That would be dangerous. But sometimes, just sometimes, they smile. And that smile feels better than gold. As you settle beneath your blanket tonight, you think of those faces. Not noble, not powerful, just present, just kind. You whisper their names softly like a prayer, not to honor them, to remember, because they remembered you first. You fall asleep with that feeling tucked close, not triumph, not pride, just a slight, steady warmth, like fingers wrapping around yours in passing or a nod across the courtyard that says, I see you. In a world where roles are everything, these are the ones who look past yours, who knows you not as a costume but as a person, a tired one, a hopeful one who juggles not just objects but expectations. You dream of them sometimes, not in grand scenes, but in quiet ones, sharing bread under a staircase, laughing softly in the laundry room, and sitting shoulder to shoulder without saying anything. And in your sleep, those moments linger longer than any applause, because they were never for show, they were for you. There are nights when no one calls for you. No trumpet, no page, no summons echoed down the stone corridors. The torches are lit. The feasting begins. But your name never leaves anyone's lips. At first, you think it's a mistake. Maybe they forgot. Perhaps the steward misread the scroll. Maybe your bells weren't loud enough this morning. But as the hours pass, the silence grows teeth, and it begins to whisper what you fear most. You are no longer needed. You pace your small chamber, hands twitching from a performance you never gave. You hum jokes under your breath, rhymes with nowhere to land. You straighten your cap, just in case the knock still comes. But it doesn't. The castle is still alive. You hear laughter from the hall, music, footsteps, the scrape of a chair. Life continues, just without you. There is no drama in being excluded. No one points. No one whispers. That would mean they noticed. This is worse. It's being unseen. You think back to the first night they called you and how your heart raced, how your knees trembled. You remember the warmth of the fire in the great hall, the gleam of torchlight on gold, the wide eyes waiting for you to speak. Now you wonder if those same eyes would even blink if you vanished. Historians love to talk about the favor of kings. Could one joke win a jester riches, and another end him? But they rarely speak of the slow fade, the weeks without summons, the shrinking audiences. The newer voices that arrive are younger, sharper, and louder. You've smiled at them. You've applauded their tricks. But part of you wonders how long before they take your corner, your spot, your name, or worse, your silence. You try to distract yourself. You sort through old props. A cracked lute, a juggling pin with a splintered handle, a wooden mask with faded paint. Each one holds echoes, of crowds, claps, of a time when your absence might have drawn questions. Now, even your shadow feels smaller. You light a candle, you write a rhyme. It's not funny. It's not meant to be. It's about a jester who once danced for kings and now dances only for ghosts. You fold the paper and tuck it beneath your pillow. Tomorrow, you promise, they will call again. Someone will remember. Someone will need a fool to make the hall ring. But part of you wonders, what if they don't? And what if that's all right? That thought startles you. You're not ready to be forgotten, but you are tired. Tired of turning every ache into amusement. I'm tired of clapping before anyone else does. I'm tired of always being the echo and never the voice. You lean against the window. The night is quiet. The stars do not clap. The moon does not chuckle. And yet, they remain. Bright, unmoved, seen, even in silence. You wonder what it would be like to live like that. To be noticed for simply being. No bells, no bow. Just you. You climb into bed, fully dressed. Not because you expect to be called, but because taking off the costume would feel like admitting something. You lie still and listen to the faint hum of the castle. Someone's laughing in the distance, but not at one of your jokes. A door creaks. A log snaps in the hearth. Life goes on. You whisper a line to yourself, soft and slow. One of your favorites. It doesn't ask for laughter. It only asks to be heard. And in the dark, you realize something. Maybe being forgotten isn't the same as being alone. Because in this quiet, you still exist. You still feel. You still dream. Historians may never write about the fool who wasn't called. But you'll remember. Not with bitterness, with gentleness. Because silence, too, can be kind. It gives you space. To rest. To breathe. To hear your thoughts again. You close your eyes and smile. Not big. Not wide. Just enough. And in the pause between performances, you find something rare. Stillness. And for tonight, that is enough. You dream that night, not of applause, but of a garden. One that no one else visits. You walk between rows of sleeping flowers, and no one asks you to perform. You are. A breeze passes. You bow, not to an audience, but to the wind itself. It accepts you. No laughter, no judgment, just presence. When morning comes, you wake slowly. The summons hasn't arrived, but the sun has. And that's something. You rise not with a flourish, but with calm. You stretch, scratch your shoulder, and drink from a chipped cup. And for now, no one is watching. But you are still here. And that, quietly, beautifully, is enough. Some jokes make people laugh, others make people nervous, and a rare few leave the room completely silent. You know the difference. You've lived it. There's a fine line between jest and danger, thinner than a sword's edge, and you've danced on it more than once. Not every laugh is safe. Not every audience is forgiving. Sometimes, a well-aimed punchline lands like a blade, and once it cuts, there's no taking it back. It starts the way any joke does. A setup, a beat, a wink. Maybe someone spills wine, or a noble stumbles on a name and you seize it, because that's what they expect you to do. That's your role. The fool who says what no one else dares. But tonight, the timing is off. The air is thick. The Lord, your target, has drunk too much and smiled too little. Still, you deliver the line. And nothing happens. At least, not at first. He chuckles. Once, tight and sharp. The court laughs too, more out of habit than amusement. But his eyes don't leave yours. And in them, you don't see mirth. You know the calculation. Later, a steward tells you not to joke about lineage, or the banners on the wall, or the way the lady 2 seats down always squints when she laughs. You nod, but you already know. You knew the moment your joke landed like a dropped sword. Historians still argue whether jesters had free speech. You've heard it phrased that way, like your motley tunic is a shield, like your bells are armor. But no cloth protects against pride. No rhyme deflects insult once it's taken root. Do you remember when another fool vanished after a single pun about the Queen's cousin? He had timing, talent, a lisp that made his insults sound innocent. No one saw him after the banquet. You learned from that. There's an art to apology without groveling. You've practiced it. A lowered gaze, a quieter tone, a second, gentler joke to soften the first. It doesn't always work. But sometimes it buys you enough time to leave the hall with your head still attached. You know which nobles can laugh at themselves, and which ones only laugh when others are hurting. You tailor every jest like a blade with a handle wrapped in velvet, sharp but soft enough not to draw blood. But there are nights when the line blurs when you hear the laughter and mistake it for permission. When you think, just for a second, that you are safe to be clever. And then the room shifts. The laughs die down a fraction too fast. The smiles stay frozen a beat too long. And you feel it. Like stepping on ice that's too thin. The danger isn't loud. It doesn't shout. It holds its breath. That's when you start speaking faster and joking in layers, hoping one line erases the last. You dance harder, not to delight, but to distract. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't, the silence that follows is the coldest thing you've ever known. Once, you saw a man beheading a chicken for the feast. The way he held it. The way it wriggled, trusting the hand that fed it. And the way, in one blink, it became still. You think about that when you tell certain jokes. You've crafted an instinct, a sixth sense of how the wind blows in a room. It's not foolproof, but it saved you more than ever. The court doesn't want honesty. It wants performance. It wants danger, but only when it's safely distant. It wants the illusion of rebellion, delivered by someone who knows exactly where to stop. You've become a master at stopping just in time. But the fear never leaves. It sits behind every jest, a quiet warning. And sometimes, late at night, you rehearse the joke again. You whisper it to the dark. You add a line, remove a word, and soften the punch. It's never perfect. It never will be. But you say it anyway because silence is its kind of death. You lie in bed and imagine the room turning toward you, not against you. Laughing, yes, but gently, forgivingly. You imagine them laughing not because you danced on the edge, but because you led them away from it. And you sleep, uncertain, but still breathing. Tomorrow you'll tell safer jokes. The kind about ducks in barrels, about nobles with bad breath, about a goat who thought it was a bishop. They'll laugh. They always do. But inside, you'll still be measuring every word, weighing every pause, and listening for the silence that bites. You'll smile wide, bow low, and tuck your fear behind your teeth like a splinter you can't pull. And maybe one day, the room will laugh not at you, not beneath you, but beside you. Until then, you walk the edge, careful, clever, alive. And when sleep finally finds you, it is not peaceful but deep. The sleep of someone who has dodged danger by daylight and needs the dark to forget. Your hands twitch as you dream, not juggling this time, but balancing and always balancing. And in that dream, you do not fall, not tonight. They laugh when you fall. That's the job, to trip with flair. Tumble like a leaf in a storm and spring back up as if gravity never mattered. The illusion is joy, effortless, chaotic joy. But your body knows better. Every fall leaves a bruise. Every twist strains something. And now, as you sit on the edge of your straw mattress, rubbing your lower back, you realize something quietly terrifying. Your body is starting to say no. Your knees don't bounce back like they used to. Your shoulder clicks every time you stretch your arm too wide. Your left ankle, your poor, noble left ankle, sounds like it's trying to communicate in Morse code every time you land on it wrong. Of course, you don't show it. The court expects emotion, springs and flips, cartwheels and pratfalls. They want to see the fool fly and flop like a puppet without strings. So you do it. You smile. You leap. You land. You ache. The worst part isn't the pain. It's pretending it doesn't exist. You've mastered the art of grimacing behind a grin, of limping with rhythm, of turning a wince into a bow. Sometimes you even fool yourself for a moment, but the body keeps score. Historians often write about jesters as ageless figures, eternal tricksters in motley and bells. They forget that knees age, that spines compress, that juggling knives is very hard on the wrists. You remember the day you tried to juggle 5 apples, slipped on your foot and twisted your hip so badly you had to finish the show sitting down. They thought it was part of the act. You smiled through it all, and then cried in the bath later when no one could hear you. You've had more baths like that than you care to count. You've learned tricks to cope. Hot bricks, wrapped in cloth, tucked beneath your tunic to soothe your lower back. It is a special way to roll your shoulder before a cartwheel. A deep breath and a prayer before every jump. You've even named your aches. The dull throb in your hip is Jeffrey. The sharp one in your elbow is Matilda. And the stabbing sensation just below your ribs? That's Clarence. Clarence is a menace. There's a stable boy who helps you stretch sometimes. He learned from watching the knights prepare for sparring. You lie on the floor while he gently pulls your arms back and presses on your shoulders. "It's like unbaking bread," he once said. You told him that was a terrible metaphor, but you appreciated it all the same. You've started to notice how the other performers look at you, the newer ones. The acrobats and dancers don't creak when they move. They still have bounce. You have resolved. You don't resent them. Not really. You remember being that bouncy. You wish your back did too. One night, after a long show, you sat by the fire and realized you couldn't get up without help. Your legs declined the invitation. A maid had to pull you upright. You laughed and made a joke about statues coming to life. She didn't laugh. She looked worried. That scared you more than the pain. Because of the pain, you can hide. The worry of others? That's harder to mask. You lie awake some nights and wonder how many more pratfalls you have left. How many more leaps before your body demands a final bow. You picture yourself in a cottage far from the court, surrounded by chickens and peace. No bells, no jokes, just warm soup and a chair that doesn't wobble. It's a lovely dream. But when morning comes and the page knocks on your door, you still put on the motley. Still, strap on the bells. Still, rehearse a new tumble that your spine is already preemptively arguing with. Because as long as they call, you answer. And because despite the pain, despite Clarence and Jeffrey and Matilda, you still love it. The rhythm of it. The spark of laughter when a joke lands just right. The hush before a punchline. The swell of surprise when you leap higher than anyone thought you could. There's power in that, even if it hurts, even if it costs. You tell yourself you'll stop when the aches become more than whispers when Clarence starts shouting, when your body says, not maybe, but not. But until then, you stretch, you breathe, you prepare, you perform. Tonight, as you settle into bed, your muscles hum with protest. You shift, and your hip reminds you who's in charge. You smile anyway because you survived another day, another show. It was another jump that could have gone wrong, but didn't. You pull the blanket over your shoulder and close your eyes. Tomorrow, they'll ask you to fall again, and tomorrow, you will. But tonight, your bed holds you without expectation, and that at least doesn't hurt. Laughter used to be music. You remember that. In the early days, when every giggle felt like applause, every chuckle was magic. You chased laughs like children chase fireflies, wide-eyed, breathless, dazzled. But lately the sound has changed. It's still loud, it's still full of teeth, but there's something hollow in it now, a sharp edge beneath the shine. And sometimes, when the crowd erupts, you smile, but inside, something curls away. Because laughter doesn't always mean joy anymore. Sometimes, it's just noise. It's the laugh that comes too quickly, too loudly. The one that says, I'm supposed to find this funny. The one people give to fit in, please, and be seen laughing, even if they don't feel it. And the worst part is, you can hear the difference now. You didn't used to. You believed every laugh, even the strained ones, especially the strained ones. You thought they meant you were doing something right and reaching people that you mattered. Now you know better. Now you can tell when they're laughing out of habit, or politeness, or boredom dressed up in cheer. And once you know it, you can't unhear it. You perform anyway. Of course you do. You juggle and rhyme and fall on your backside with theatrical flair. You deliver the lines that always work, the faces that always win. You do your job, but it doesn't feel the same. You've become an echo chamber for forced amusement. A mirror that reflects what people want to show each other, not what they feel. Historians say jesters were experts in reading rooms. They knew how to shift the mood, soften the tension, and lift the air. And yes, you've done all that. But what they don't say is what it costs. It always costs something to be the one who lifts. Who fills the silence? Who makes it safe for everyone else to smile? Especially when you're not smiling inside. There are days when you finish a performance, step off the dais, and feel nothing. Not pride, not relief, just emptiness. Like all the joy went out through your mouth and left you hollow. You start asking yourself strange questions. Did they laugh? Did they enjoy it? Did it matter? Did you? You sit in your small room, picking at a crust of bread, and remember a moment from long ago. One perfect show, one real laugh. A noblewoman with laugh lines so deep they made her eyes disappear. She laughed like no one was watching. Not because she should, but because she couldn't help it. You miss that kind of laughter. You miss that kind of joy. Now it's mostly nods and claps, and people say, "You're so funny," with the same tone they use for, "Dinner was fine." You've become entertainment like a lute, a wall ornament, visible, decorative, untouched. And still, you play. Because what else would you do? A part of you wonders if this is just what happens. If the sparkle always fades. Suppose the job wears out, the wonder. If the jokes are told too often, they ring falsely, even in your ears. You try to write new ones, to invent, to surprise. But even the new ones feel like old clothes. It's too snug. It's too threadbare. So you dig deeper. Not for funnier lines, but for honest ones. For moments that feel true. It's a joke about your bad back. It's a story that's too silly not to be real. It's a rhyme that's more confession than comedy. And sometimes, just sometimes, it works. A real laugh. A warm laugh. The kind that reaches the eyes. It's rare. But when it happens, it lights something inside you. Not a fire. A candle. Small. Steady. Hopeful. You live for those candles now. One night, a boy in the audience laughed so hard he snorted. The whole court turned to look at him, and his face went red, but he kept laughing. You couldn't help it. You laughed too. Not the jester laugh, the real one, from somewhere deep. You think about that boy when the forced laughter comes, when the hall rings hollow. You remember that joy is possible, that it's still there, somewhere, underneath the noise. Tonight, as you lie in bed, you think about the shows to come, about the laughs you'll chase, the ones you'll doubt, the ones that might be true if you're lucky. You pull the blanket over your chin and close your eyes. You whisper a new joke to yourself. It's not very good, but it's honest. And that's a start. There's a moment each morning, right after waking, right before remembering, when everything is still. Your eyes are closed. Your breath is even. For a second, you forget the weight in your joints, the stiffness in your spine, and the expectations in the hall beyond the door. Then you blink, and it all returns. The aches are old friends now. They greet you before the sunlight does. Your knee groans, your neck protests. Your back feels like it's been arguing with the floor all night and lost the debate. You swing your legs over the cot's edge and sit there momentarily, not quite ready to stand. The bells on your cap jingle faintly on the wall where you hung it. Even they sound tired. You wash your face in a cold basin. The reflection that stares back at you is familiar, but only barely. You tilt your head and try to find the version of yourself who once sprinted into courtrooms with fire in his feet and mischief in his grin. He's still there. Somewhere. But lately, he's been quieter. You dress slowly, each motion a conversation with your bones. The costume goes on like armor now, not joy. The colors feel brighter than your mood. The sleeves are too loud for the silence inside you. Historians often paint jesters as ever young, ever bold. They forget that weariness is not just in the limbs, it's in the spirit. And when the spirit tires, even laughter feels heavy. You step into the corridor. The day begins, and with it, the performance. The halls look the same, but you feel smaller in them. You pass tapestries you've walked by 100 times but don't see them. You nod to the guards, smile at the pages, and offer a wink to the kitchen maid. But it's all automatic now, like clockwork. Like a marionette whose strings are pulled by duty, not desire. Sometimes you wonder, when was the last time you truly felt like yourself? Not the fool, not the performer, just you. There is a growing disconnect between who you are and who you play. You hear your voice on stage and barely recognize it. It's too cheerful, too sharp, too loud for the silence that follows you back to your chamber. Even your jokes surprise you. You try to keep up appearances. You invent new routines, tell new tales, practice new pratfalls. But it feels like wearing a mask that doesn't quite fit anymore. And worst of all, the audience doesn't notice. They still laugh, still cheer. I still call you brilliant, clever, and delightful. But you hear the hollowness in their words, or it's just your echo bouncing back too loudly. You finish a show and return to your room, unlace your boots, and stare at your feet like they belong to someone else. It's not sadness, not exactly. It's something thinner, quieter. It's something like fading. You try to ground yourself, in habits, in small rituals, the way you fold your cap, the sound of your shoes tapping the stones, the whispered rhyme you say under your breath before stepping on stage. It helps, a little, but there are days when even those rituals feel foreign. You touch your face and think, he is me. But it feels like a borrowed role, like you're standing in for someone who's meant to return any day now. And maybe he will. Perhaps all of this is just a season, a passing fog. You tell yourself that. But when the fog lingers too long, even hope grows heavy. Historians never wrote about this part. The slow drift from self. The erosion. They wrote about the satire, the quick wit, the daring, but not the quiet mornings when a jester looks in the mirror and thinks, how am I beneath the bells? You wish someone had. You wish you had asked sooner. Still, you show up. Still, you smile. Still, you dance. Because part of you remembers that joy used to be real, that laughter used to lift you, not bury you. And maybe it could again. Tomorrow you'll wake again. You'll forget for a second. You'll blink, and the weight will return. But you'll greet it differently. Maybe instead of asking, where did I go? You ask, what part of me remains? And in that question, find a small thread to hold. The thread of the boy who first made someone laugh with nothing but a silly hat and 2 large shoes. The thread of the man who once believed joy was as contagious as yawns. The thread of the jester who still, even now, holds a sliver of mischief close to his chest. You're not gone. You're not whole either. But in between, there is still something breathing. And that is enough. You roll to your side, the mattress creaking, your back sighing. You breathe in through your nose, slow and deep, and let the air fill whatever corners of you still remember how to hope. Tomorrow will come. But tonight, you rest as yourself. Whoever that may be. The night quiets in strange ways. The torches burn low. The clatter of plates fades. Somewhere, a lute plays a slow tune. Soft, wandering, as if even the strings are tired. You're not expected to perform anymore tonight. The court has laughed. The nobles have yawned. The great hall has emptied. What's left is candlelight, silence, and the weight of everything you didn't say. You walk slower through halls that echo less with footfall and more with memory. Your steps trace a path you've walked countless times. Past the tapestry of the hunt. Past the cold stairway where the wind always finds you. Past the servant's door where warm bread sometimes waits. Forgotten and still kind. You touch the stones as you pass. Fingers brushing walls that never laugh. never cry but have seen it all. The walls remember. They remember your younger days. The nights you stayed up practicing tumbles under the moonlight when your voice cracked with laughter, not just from jokes but joy. They remember when you were the favorite, the bright one, the surprise that turned a dull evening into a storm of delight. And they remember the slow shift, the creak in your back, the pause before your punchline, the way your smiles have grown quieter, deeper, and more private. Tonight, you return to your room, not in a rush, but like a man who has learned the value of each quiet footstep. You remove your cap gently, unlace your sleeves, fold the motley carefully, not because of pride, but because you need that small ritual. You need something to ground you. You sit by the window and breathe. There are no cheers, no drums, just the occasional breeze pushing against the shutters. The stars blink slowly, like they too are trying to stay awake. You think of all the things you could say if anyone asked, but no one asks. So, you speak them to the air. You speak about the joy of making someone laugh on their worst day, about the fear of telling one joke too many, about the ache that lives in your spine and the one that lives further in, where no salve can reach. You whisper the names of people who are gone, other fools, other friends, a page that once brought you soup when you had no appetite, a kitchen maid who braided your hair and never told anyone. You say their names because someone should. You remember a rhyme from years ago, one of your first. You speak it softly, and it still fits. It makes you smile. Not the wide performer's smile, a smaller one, the kind that doesn't ask to be seen. The moon is high now. The castle sleeps. You lie down, bones sighing, thoughts slowing. You don't think about tomorrow. You don't think about the following joke, the next bow, the next laugh. You think about the quiet, about how it holds you, about how you are still here beneath the performance and behind the painted face, still breathing, still dreaming. And as the night wraps itself around you like a soft, worn cloak, you close your eyes and let the silence speak for you. Because it says the most important thing: you were here. You mattered. And for tonight, that is enough. The applause fades faster than you expect. One moment, you're standing center stage, basking in the echoes of laughter and clapping hands. The next, the hall empties like spilled wine. Cloaks swirl. Boots scrape stone. Conversation shifts, and suddenly you're part of the furniture again. No one looks your way as they leave. No nods. No words. Just footsteps and distance. And there you are, alone again, with nowhere to go. You hold your final pose a beat longer than you need to, for dignity, for routine, out of habit, to give the moment its full chance to matter. Then your arms drop. Your bells jingle, a little pathetic in the silence. You step down from the dais slowly. The floor creaks beneath you in places that only creak when the room is empty. A dropped goblet rolls to a stop near your boot. No one sees it. No one comes back for it. You pick it up anyway. You move toward the door, not because you're expected elsewhere, but because staying would feel even more pointless. The corridor is colder than the hall. Always is. And quieter. You walk without direction. Your footsteps are soft, and your thoughts are louder than they should be. Where do jesters go when the show is done? You don't have a chamber like the nobles. No featherbed, no attendant, no warm wine waiting. Just a cot and a creaky stool and a small mirror that reflects more tiredness than face these days. Historians don't talk about this part, the part after. They love the stage, the jokes. The political barbs are wrapped in rhyme, but they don't write about the moment the curtain closes, and you're just a man in bells holding nothing but breath and bruises. You wander past the kitchens. A fire glows faintly behind the shutters. You think about going in and asking for bread, but you don't. You're not hungry, just unsure. You reach the courtyard. It's still. The stars blink above you like uncertain applause. You sit on a low stone wall and stretch your legs. Your back cracks. Clarence, your ever-rude rib pain makes a brief cameo appearance. "Lovely show," you mutter to no one, and no one replies. You sometimes wonder if the performance version of you is the one people prefer, the one who's always ready with a quip, always smiling and always moving. And maybe that's why they leave you behind when the laughter dies down. Because you stop being useful. You sit there for a while, not thinking anything in particular. It's just not moving. The kind of stillness that's not restful but necessary. There is a pause before the world starts again. Eventually, the cold nudges you back inside. Your steps echo in the empty hallways. You pass by your reflection in the tall dining room windows. You look like a ghost who forgot to leave the party. You reach your room. Close the door behind you gently. You take off your costume slower than usual. Not out of pain, lack of urgency. No one is waiting. No one is watching. You sit on the bed. Not quite lying down. Not quite awake. That middle space where you feel most yourself, whatever that self is these days. You think about the applause again. It used to lift you. Now, it just signals the end. You whisper a rhyme into the dark, one you haven't used in years. It's soft, simple, not meant for anyone else. Just you. And as the echo of it settles in the silence, you feel a little less alone. Because applause is never really the point. It may be the quiet after that tells you who you are. They bring in someone new, fresh-faced, bright-eyed. Limbs that don't crack when they cartwheel. Jokes like fireworks, loud, fast, effortless. The court loves them. Of course they do. And you, well, you smile, you clap, you laugh when everyone else laughs. You nod when they say, "Isn't he clever?" But something in your chest doesn't nod along. The new Jester is everything you used to be. Or at least everything they remember you being. Quick, charming, tireless. He enters a room and fills it without even trying. He juggles 5 torches and lands on 1 foot, and the nobles gasp like they've never seen a trick before. You've done that trick. You once did it with 7 torches and a rhyme. No one mentions that. They introduce him as our new delight, and you stand 2 steps behind, still wearing your bells, holding your staff, and smiling. You are no longer the delight. You are the comparison. It's not jealousy, exactly. You don't want to take anything from him. He's good. Truly. His timing is sharp. His rhymes are clever. His eyes sparkle when he delivers a line. You know that feeling. You remember what it feels like to hold the room in your hands. It's just that now the room doesn't look at you anymore. They look past you. Or worse, through you. Historians often skip this chapter. They write about fools who fell from favor and disgrace or scandal, not ones who simply faded, who stood too long in the same spot until someone younger danced into it. You try not to let it show. You offer advice when asked. You laugh at his jokes, even when you hear the endings from a mile away. You stay after shows to help sweep confetti and calm the kitchen cat. You're still useful. You're still kind. But usefulness is not the same as joy, and kindness does not shield against the sting of being replaced. One night, after a performance, the new Jester, Julian, his name is Julian, sits beside you by the fire. He says, "I used to watch you when I was a boy. You were magic." You nod. You thank him. You mean it. But the words settle oddly in your chest. Were. He repeats it before bed. You were the best. It's meant as praise. It lands like a farewell. Later, in your room, you look at your old props. A spinning plate with a chip. A cap with fading colors. A mask that's worn soft at the edges. You used to carry them everywhere. Now they stay in a drawer. You tell yourself this is natural. Every role must pass. Every stage welcomes someone new. But when Julian walks into the hall and the lords lean forward, eager, laughing before he even speaks, you feel a part of yourself step back. Not bitter, Not broken, just farther away. There's one moment you can't forget. Julian told a joke. Your joke. A classic. One you made up on a rainy morning when the kitchen flooded, and you slipped in pig fat and turned it into a bit. He does it well. Very well. He even adds a spin at the end. The room erupts. And as the laughter swells, his eyes find yours. Just for a second. Not a challenge. Not an apology. Something else. Recognition. You hold that look. You nod. He nods back. And in that one shared second, the two of you exist outside the show. Outside the noise. Just two men in bells know what it feels like to make a room laugh. And what it costs. You return to your room in silence that night, but it feels different. Not lighter, but not as cold. You lie down slowly, your back protests, as always. Clarence groans. You let the silence settle. You whisper the old rhyme. You remember the sound of real laughter. Yours, theirs, his. And you sleep, knowing that even if the room no longer looks for you, someone still sees you. And someone always will. The castle buzzes with celebration. A noble wedding, a visiting prince, a seasonal feast. You've lost track of the reason, only that it's grand. Every corridor smells of roasted meat and polished wood. Every servant scurries with urgency. Everyone has a place. Everyone except you. You walk through the courtyard, dressed and ready, unsure whether anyone will call for you. Bells on your cap. Motley ironed. Well, as much as motley ever can be. You even rehearsed an old song in case you're summoned. But no one summons. You pass the new Jester, Julian, surrounded by a small crowd near the stairwell. He's practicing fire eating. Someone claps. Someone squeals. You nod and keep walking. You aren't bitter. Well, not exactly. You feel misplaced, like a decoration left out after rearranging the room. You hover near the kitchens. Help carry a basket of pears. Chat with the laundry girl about the thunder last night. Pet the castle cat. None of it feels like a role, more like passing time. The great hall is nearly ready. Garland hangs above the throne. Tables gleam. Goblets wait in tight rows, ready to be tipped in laughter and wine. You take a step in, then stop. There's no chair for you. Julian's already perched on the edge of the minstrel's bench. He catches your eye and smiles. You smile back, small and tight. You retreat before anyone can notice you noticing. Historians would say the jester's job was to enliven any gathering. But what if you aren't asked? What if the gathering is lively enough without you? You stand behind a pillar for a while, just listening. Laughter, music, the tap of heels, the rustle of silk, and none of it includes your name. A page brushes past and glances at you. Didn't know you were still around, he says, not unkindly. You nod. Neither did I. You head outside. The sun's dipping now, casting long shadows that stretch like thoughts you've been avoiding. You sit on the old bench beneath the yew tree, the one with initials carved into the wood. Some old love story no one remembers. You hum the rhyme you wrote for a wedding 10 years ago. You still remember it. No one else does. You think briefly about leaving. Not forever. Just for a walk. A break. A day where you don't wait to be called and wonder if silence means irrelevance. But where would you go? Your world is stone corridors, torchlight, and echoes. The sound of shoes on tile and your name shouted in jest. Without it, who are you? You hear cheering from the hall. A toast, perhaps. A joke. Maybe Julian's juggling again. He's good at that. You lie back on the bench. The wood creaks beneath you. Leaves whisper overhead. You stare up at the sky and try to imagine being somewhere else. You can't. Not really. Even if you walked away, you'd still carry the rhythm of this place in your bones. You'd still hear laughter in empty fields. You'd still look for light coming from high windows. And yet, something is shifting. Not in the castle, in you. You're no longer waiting for applause. Like the wind, you're just listening and letting the moment pass through you. Someone calls your name. You sit up, startled. It's not a noble, not a steward, just one of the kitchen lads, holding a sweet roll. You want one? You're always nice to me. Fig and nut, warm. You take it. You say thank you. You eat in silence. And for that moment, as the party roars somewhere behind you, you are not forgotten and not needed, and just seen. It's enough. You stand, brush crumbs from your lap, and wander back toward your room. Not because the night is over, but because you've found your ending. Software quiet. Unremarkable, but real. Some nights, your dreams are not dreams at all. They are stages. You wake unsure whether you ever stopped performing. Your arms twitch mid-juggle. Your lips mumble rhymes. Your feet shift beneath imaginary spotlights. Even in sleep, you're still the fool. You dream of halls that never end, of torches that flicker to the beat of your footsteps, of endless crowds with no faces, just clapping hands and expectant silence. You tell a joke, and they laugh. You fall, and they cheer. You rise, and they vanish. You wake with your mouth mid-sentence and no idea what you were saying. Sometimes the dreams are gentler. You're walking across a rope suspended over a stage, not high, not dangerous, just endless. No destination, no music, just you, balancing, performing, forever. Your dreams are more exhausting than your days. Historians don't write about a jester's sleep. They assume it was deep and well-earned. But you know better. When your entire life is performance, rest becomes a stranger. Your body lies still, but your mind keeps rehearsing. Even dreams become scripts. There was a night, you remember it vividly, where you dreamed of applause so loud it shook the room. When you awoke, there was no sound, only the clink of a mouse near your chamber door, rustling for crumbs. And still, you bowed. Old habits, older ghosts. You start to dread the silence between dreaming and waking. That foggy moment where you don't know who you are yet. Are you the jester? The man beneath the bells? Or is it just a voice caught between memory and expectation? You whisper rhymes in your sleep now. The servants hear them. They've told you gently. You laugh it off. But it bothers you. Not the embarrassment. The fact that even your dreams are working. You sometimes wonder what you'd dream if you'd never been the fool. Would you dream of oceans, of wide green hills, of nothing at all? Would your sleep be deep? Would it be yours? One night, you fall asleep and dream of silence. Just that. No crowds, no show, just a quiet field and the sound of wind through grass. You sit on a rock and do nothing. No one watches. Nothing happens. You wake up crying. You don't know why. Maybe it was the peace. Maybe it was the feeling of finally stopping. Or maybe it was grief. For a part of yourself you only meet in sleep. Something is terrifying about that. It is to realize that rest is where you live now. And waking means leaving him behind. Still, you keep going. You perform. You smile. You sleep. You dream of the performance again. A wheel, turning gently. You tell no one. Who would you tell? They see your shows, not your shadows. You lie in bed and stare at the ceiling, wondering when it happened, when the act left the stage and climbed into your mind, when the bells stopped coming off, when the jokes followed you into dreams. You used to sleep like a child, deep and dreamless. You remember those days. Straw mattress, heavy blankets, the sound of owls outside the castle walls. Now, even the owls seem to wait for your following line. You try tricks to quiet your mind. A warm drink before bed. A rhyme spoke backward. You even tried counting sheep once, but they kept heckling you. Old habits. You lie very still, breathe very slowly, and whisper into the dark. No lines tonight, just sleep. Sometimes that helps. Sometimes the dreams obey. But more often than not, the curtain rises again, and you walk onto the stage in your sleep. It starts as a joke, like most things do. You find a scrap of parchment, an old quill with a stubborn nib, and you begin to write a letter. Not a rhyme, not a routine, but something else. Not to anyone in particular, just to someone who might understand. You don't start with "Dear." That feels too formal, too final. Instead, you begin mid-thought, as if the conversation has been going on forever, and you're just catching up. "I don't know if you exist," you write. "But if you do, I hope you're somewhere quiet." The ink smudges where your hand hesitates. You write slowly and carefully, not for beauty, but for honesty. The kind of truth you don't speak aloud. Not on stage, not in passing, not even to yourself. You write about the weight of silence after a show. About the way laughter echoes longer when you're not part of it. About the strange grief of watching someone else perform your favorite joke. You write about dreams, how they no longer belong to you. Even in sleep, your hands mime juggling, your feet tap rhythms for no one. You write about your back, your ribs, the pain that shows up before you do. You write about joy, how it used to feel light but now arrives heavy with memory. You don't blame anyone, not really. It's not the court's fault for loving someone new. It's not the steward's fault for forgetting your name at the door. It's not the boy's fault for laughing louder at someone else. You just needed to say it, to let the thoughts out, like birds from a too small cage. The letter grows longer than you expect. You flip the page. Find another scrap. Stitch the story together, line by line. At one point, you laugh. Not bitterly, genuinely. Because one sentence reads, "I don't know what I'm doing." You underline it twice. You write a wish near the end. Not for fame, not for praise, just for a moment. A single quiet moment where someone sees you, really sees you, and doesn't want anything. Not a joke, not a story, just your company. It feels silly to write it, but it also feels true. You finish with a signature that isn't your name, just a small drawing of a bell, nothing more. You don't plan to send it. There's no one to send it to. You fold the pages slowly, press them flat, hold them in your hands like a secret that needs air. Then you tuck them under your pillow, not to hide them, but to keep them close. Later that night, you wonder if the wind ever carries things like that. Unsent words, quiet wishes. Maybe someone, somewhere, hears them. That may be enough. You close your eyes, and your dreams do not start with a spotlight for the first time in weeks. They start with a bench in a quiet field, and someone sitting beside you. No questions, just company. It happens without planning. You wake up and decide that you won't speak unless spoken to for today. No jokes, no rhymes, no clever observations were tossed like breadcrumbs in the hallways. You let the world move without your narration, and something shifts. At first, no one notices. The kitchen maid gives you bread. You nod. The steward waves. You smile. A guard makes a pun, clearly expecting one in return. You raise an eyebrow and keep walking. It's not defiance. It's not sadness. It's stillness. You move through the morning like a ghost who hasn't decided if it's haunting or just passing through. You watch conversations unfold without your input. Jokes bloom and fade without your water. And the world keeps turning. You sit beneath the courtyard arch, watching dust dance in the sunlight. No one interrupts you. They assume you're writing and/or thinking, or brooding, which is fashionable among poets and less suspicious among fools. You aren't doing anything, and that's the point. You notice things more clearly. The uneven pattern of the flagstones, the way the sparrows take turns at the fountain, the rhythm of the castle breathing, doors opening, feet shifting, servants humming. Usually, you'd mimic the humming, turn it into a song, make someone laugh. Today, you listen. It's strange, this quiet. Not lonely, not heavy, just quiet. You pass Julian, the new jester, in the hall. He's practicing a flip and nearly knocks over a candlestick. He glances at you, waiting for a comment. You tilt your head and keep walking. He looks puzzled. You feel free. Historians might call it a withdrawal from duties, a sign of fatigue, a pause in performance. But you wouldn't call it anything. It's just a day without dialogue. And in that space, something soft opens inside you. You rest in small ways. You sit without rehearsing. You eat without entertainment. You stretch your arms and let them fall naturally, not in a flourish or joke. Just arms, just breathe, just being. No punchlines, no pauses. At one point, a page boy stubs his toe and yelps. You raise your hand sympathetically but say nothing. He grins anyway. Not every connection requires a joke. By midday, people begin to notice. "You're quiet today," says a maid. You nod. "Everything all right?" asks a knight. You smile and nod again. "Saving your voice?" Julian asks over supper. You raise one shoulder. They seem unsure what to make of you without your voice, as if you've removed an essential color from your costume. But you don't feel diminished. You feel intact. There's something sacred in being allowed to take up space without explaining it. You return to your chamber earlier than usual, light a single candle, sit cross-legged on the floor. No props, no paper, no pressure. You listen to the castle exhale. And for the first time in ages, you feel your breath match its rhythm. You lie on your back and stare at the ceiling beams. They've always been there. You've just never really looked. Your fingers trace the floorboards. No lines come to mind. And that today is a blessing. You whisper only one thing before bed. Thank you. You're not sure who it's for. The sky, maybe. The quiet. Yourself. You sleep deeply that night. No juggling dreams, no imaginary crowds, just trees, a breeze. Your own 2 feet on a path that asks nothing of you. It happens without planning. You wake up and decide that you won't speak unless spoken to for today. No jokes, no rhymes, no clever observations were tossed like breadcrumbs in the hallways. You let the world move without your narration, and something shifts. At first, no one notices. The kitchen maid gives you bread. You nod. The steward waves. You smile. A guard makes a pun, clearly expecting one in return. You raise an eyebrow and keep walking. It's not defiance. It's not sadness. It's stillness. You move through the morning like a ghost who hasn't decided if it's haunting or just passing through. You watch conversations unfold without your input. Jokes bloom and fade without your water. And the world keeps turning. You sit beneath the courtyard arch, watching dust dance in the sunlight. No one interrupts you. They assume you're writing or thinking, or brooding, which is fashionable among poets and less suspicious among fools. You aren't doing anything, and that's the point. You notice things more clearly. The uneven pattern of the flagstones, the way the sparrows take turns at the fountain, the rhythm of the castle breathing, doors opening, feet shifting, servants humming. Usually, you'd mimic the humming, turn it into a song, make someone laugh. Today, you listen. It's strange, this quiet. Not lonely, not heavy, just quiet. You pass Julian, the new jester, in the hall. He's practicing a flip and nearly knocks over a candlestick. He glances at you, waiting for a comment. You tilt your head and keep walking. He looks puzzled. You feel free. Historians might call it a withdrawal from duties, a sign of fatigue, a pause in performance. But you wouldn't call it anything. It's just a day without dialogue. And in that space, something soft opens inside you. You rest in small ways. You sit without rehearsing. You eat without entertainment. You stretch your arms and let them fall naturally, not in a flourish or joke. Just arms, just breathe, just being. No punchlines, no pauses. At one point, a page boy stubs his toe and yelps. You raise your hand sympathetically but say nothing. He grins anyway. Not every connection requires a joke. By midday, people begin to notice. "You're quiet today," says a maid. You nod. "Everything all right?" asks a knight. You smile and nod again. Saving your voice? Julian asks over supper. You raise one shoulder. They seem unsure what to make of you without your voice, as if you've removed an essential color from your costume. But you don't feel diminished. You feel intact. There's something sacred in being allowed to take up space without explaining it. You return to your chamber earlier than usual. Light a single candle. Sit cross-legged on the floor. No props. No paper. No pressure. You listen to the castle exhale. And for the first time in ages, you feel your breath match its rhythm. You lie on your back and stare at the ceiling beams. They've always been there. You've just never really looked. Your fingers trace the floorboards. No lines come to mind. And that today is a blessing. You whisper only one thing before bed. Thank you. You're not sure who it's for. The sky, maybe. The quiet. Yourself. You sleep deeply that night. No juggling dreams, no imaginary crowds, just trees, a breeze. Your own 2 feet on a path that asks nothing of you. It happens in passing. No fanfare, no prelude. Just a tug on your sleeve as you exit the kitchens. A child, not more than 7, looks up at you wide-eyed and says, "You helped my mum laugh when she was sad." Then, without warning, she hugs you. Not the polite hug of a noble child taught to perform affection. A real hug. Small arms wrapped around your legs. Face pressed into your tunic. Warm. Present. Certain. You freeze. Not because you're frightened. Just unprepared. You haven't been touched like that in a long time. Unasked. Unplanned. Unmasked. Your hands hover awkwardly before settling on her shoulders. You pat her gently. "Thank you," she says again. And just as quickly, she skips off. One shoe loose, hair slightly tangled, humming a tune you think you might have made up years ago. And then she's gone. You stand there longer than you should. A ladle clinks into a pot behind you. Someone drops a carrot. The world continues. But you, something in you stays still. You weren't performing. You weren't telling a joke. You were walking. And still, someone reached out. Not for laughter. For you. It stays with you through the day. The warmth of her hug. The weightlessness of her words. You helped my mum laugh when she was sad. You didn't know her mother had been sad. You don't remember the moment. Maybe you made a joke about soup being smarter than the steward. Or a tumble that ended with turnips in your hat. Perhaps you made a rhyme about laundry stains. You were doing your job, but to them, it mattered. You sit beneath the stairwell that afternoon and think about how rarely you're thanked outside the hall. Most of your praise lives in the moment, bright, brief, and gone before the wine gets warm. But that little girl carried it with her, and she brought it back to you. Historians talk about legacy as if it's written in books or etched on plaques. But sometimes, legacy is a sentence whispered at someone's knees. A hug was given without rehearsal. Sometimes legacy is soft. You start noticing more. A nod from the maid who never speaks. A slice of bread left on your doorstep, still warm. A bench is wiped clean where you always sit. Small things. Unspoken, but true. You've spent years measuring your worth by laughter. By volume. By how many claps your closing line earned. Now, you wonder if there's more. That evening, Julian juggles in the courtyard. A good show. The nobles clap. You watch from a distance, not out of jealousy. Just observation. The same little girl is there clapping too. She spots you. Waves. You wave back. As you prepare for bed that night, you think about the kindness you never knew you gave. The joy landed quietly, like snow on my shoulders. You've always thought of yourself as cheerful, decorative, replaceable background music. But maybe, to some, you were more. Not just the jester, a memory, a comfort, a reason to smile on a bad day. You lie in bed and close your eyes. No spotlight tonight, no applause. Just the soft weight of that unexpected hug. It stays with you, even as you drift, even as you dream. Even as the world forgets, you remember. And that is enough. It begins with rain. The kind that taps on the roof like an impatient storyteller. The kind that makes the castle feel smaller, cozier, like a great beast curled in on itself. You find yourself in the servants' hearth room. Warm. Diamond Soy's half asleep from the sound of the fire. And beside you, Julian. For once, he's not juggling. He sits with a mug of cider, boots damp, hair curling at the edges. You both stare at the flames for a while. No need to fill the space. No need to perform. It's rare to have this silence between you. Eventually, he speaks. You ever get tired of pretending to be cheerful? You turn to him slowly. He's not smiling. You nod. Sometimes. He exhales, almost in relief. I thought maybe I was the only one. You laugh gently. Number. We all run out of spark eventually. He tilts his mug. Even you? Especially me. The fire cracks. A log collapses inward, sending sparks up the chimney. You don't often talk like this. Not with anyone. Especially not with the person who's technically replaced you. But tonight feels different. Softer. You were always so quick, Julian says. So effortless. I figured. It never got to you. It always gets to you, you say. That's how you know you're still human. He nods slowly. When I was little, I used to sneak into the back of the hall just to watch you. You made it look like magic. You smile. Not proudly, just softly. It was magic. For a while. He looks at you carefully. Do you miss it? You think. And then say, I miss the first laugh. The one that's real. The one that's not expected. I miss surprising people. Julian nods. I miss being surprised, he says. You both sip quietly for a while. Rain taps the shutters. The wind presses against the stones. Somewhere above, footsteps echo and fade. You stare into the fire and say something you've never said aloud. I don't know who I am when I'm not being funny. Julian doesn't respond right away. Then he says, That's why I asked. You glance over. He shrugs. Sometimes I don't know who I am either. And I thought, maybe you'd understand. You nod. Not because you have an answer, but because you do understand. You both sit there, not quite teacher and student. They are not quite rivals. Just two people who wear too many colors and carry too many expectations. You tell him a story about your first performance, how you tripped before you even made it to the stage, how you panicked, how you made a joke about your own knees giving up before your career began, how the queen laughed so hard she cried. I think that was the last time I made someone laugh on accident, you say. Julian chuckles. That's the best kind. You agree. You share another story. And another. And then he tells you one. And suddenly, the space between you is complete. Not of noise, but of truth. You don't talk about legacy, or fame, or who's funnier. You talk about cold floors, missed meals, the pain in your back, the odd things people say after shows. You talk about the difference between being liked and being seen. You talk about how applause fades, but some faces stay with you forever. He tells you about a boy who followed him around the square for days to hear him rhyme. You tell him about when a noble laughed so hard she snorted wine through her nose. It's not a long conversation, but it's a real one. And when the fire dies down, you both sit in the warm glow, no longer needing to speak. You rise first, stretch. Your joints crack like old doors. Julian winces. Sorry, he says. For what? I don't know. Making you feel like you had to share all that. You shake your head. I needed to. He stands too. You're still the reason I wanted to do this. You nod. And you're the reason I know when it's okay to stop. He doesn't understand the whole meaning of that yet. But one day, he will. You leave the hearth room in silence, but not alone. That night, your sleep is dreamless, and it feels like a gift. The mist comes early. It slips through the windows and rolls over the courtyard like a secret, trying not to be heard. The castle feels suspended, floating in a world made of breath and hush. You wash your face in a tin basin and catch your reflection in the dented mirror. And for the first time in a long time, you don't flinch. It's you. Just you. No cap, no bells, no forced grin. Your face looks older than you remember, gentler. It's uneven at the corners. There are lines now, but not unkind ones. The sort of lines that come from laughter and worry and too many nights spent chasing both. You don't smile at yourself, but you don't look away either. That feels like a victory. You pull on your tunic slowly. Your bones creak, but they're quieter this morning. Clarence, your ever-complaining rib, seems to be sleeping in. You step into the mist. The air tastes clean, like cold water and new pages. You walk without aim, through the empty corridor, past the side door that always sticks, down toward the courtyard where your favorite bench waits. No one is around. Even the birds are quiet. You sit and watch the mist drift. For a moment, you wonder if the castle has disappeared entirely. If you're the last thought it had before vanishing into legend. But then, a window creaks. A broom bristles against stone. The castle breathes again. Still here. Like you. You reach into your pocket and find something folded. You don't remember placing it there. It's the letter. The one you wrote weeks ago. The one you never sent. Still folded. Still soft at the edges. It's still full of things you meant to say. You hold it gently. And then, without drama, without speech, you tuck it under a loose brick by the bench. Let it rest. You don't need it anymore. You lean back and let your shoulders drop. And then, quite unexpectedly, you begin to hum. It's not a rhyme, not a routine. It's just a tune. Something simple, something quiet, something yours. No one hears it, and still, it matters. Because it's not for applause, it's not for permission, it's not to fill the silence, it's to join it. Historians love a moment of clarity. They'd call this one the mist, the mirror, the brick, the hum. But for you, it's not clarity, it's peace. No grand decision, no final act. It's just a long, slow exhale that finally reaches the bottom of your lungs. You sit there until the mist begins to lift, and the world returns in pieces. Rooftops, windows, the distant clink of dishes. You stand slowly. The aches return, but they feel different today. Less punishment, more punctuation. You return to your chamber, dress in your motley, not because you must, because you choose to. Because this morning you saw yourself in the mirror and remembered. You are not only a fool, you are also the one who stayed. The request comes quietly. No trumpets, no scrolls, just a steward leaning into your doorway, asking if you'd mind performing for the evening meal. You nod. No hesitation, no plan. Just yes. You dress slowly, not out of pain, out of care. Each layer feels lighter tonight. The motley isn't a costume, it's a memory. The bells don't jingle, they breathe. You walk the hall not like a performer, not like a ghost, just like yourself. They've already started eating. A low murmur of clinking cutlery and tired conversation. Julian is off in a corner tonight, chatting with a cook. He sees you, and his eyebrows rise. You nod once. He smiles and steps back. No rivalry, no handoff, just space. You step onto the low platform. You don't speak right away. You let the room notice you in its own time, and slowly, they do. One by one, forks pause, heads tilt, the fire crackles. Even the shadows lean forward. You begin, not with a flourish, not with a tumble, with a story, a small one, about a chicken that wandered into the scriptorium and caused theological confusion for an entire afternoon. It's silly, barely a joke, but it lands, The laughter is warm. You tell another. You move between rhymes and quiet pauses. No pressure. No need to fill every moment. You've learned that space is its kind of music. You skip the big tricks. No juggling. No flips. You don't need to prove anything. They're not laughing at the act anymore. They're laughing with you. The new Jester laughs the loudest. You lock eyes once, just briefly, and there's a thank you there. You offer one in return. There's no grand finale, no riddle, no firework of wit. You end with a line about the soup being wiser than most kings. And the room erupts, not in thunder, but in something gentler, something truer. You bow your head. Not a deep bow. Just enough to acknowledge the space between you and them. And then you step down. Not away. Just aside. You return to your room. Take off your motley for the last time. Fold it, not tightly, but with ease. No sadness, no weight. The bells don't chime as you lay it down. They rest. You lie in bed with the window cracked. The wind slips in like an old friend. You don't dream of a stage tonight. You dream of the bench beneath the yew tree, of mist, of laughter that needs no audience. And in that dream, you are not the Jester. You are the man who remembered how to listen, how to rest, how to let go. And now, your story sleeps too. The last joke has landed. The last bell has quieted. The motley rests where it belongs, not discarded, but folded with care. You no longer carry it. It no longer carries you. The halls behind you still echo, but more softly now, not with footsteps or laughter, but with memory. And memory is gentle when you let it be. You are not forgotten. You are finished. For now. Let the next Jester find his rhythm. Let him leap and rhyme and fall and rise. You have done all that. And more. And now, you rest. Feel the weight leave your shoulders. The tension unwinds from your fingers. The breath settles deep into your belly, where stories used to sit, waiting to be told. Tonight, there are no more lines. No more waiting for the next cue or the next laugh. Only quiet. Only you. Let your thoughts drift like soft fabric on a breeze. Let the stillness hold you like a thick, warm blanket. You've done enough. You were enough. You are enough. And as the castle sleeps and the world hushes around it, so can you. There was no curtain call, no spotlight, no need to bow, only breath, only peace, only sleep.